Here we go. For another rock and roll. Towards the sun from downtown Montreal, special event Monday 25th of August. Special N.A.C.W.P rock and roll edition for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, truckers, electricians, the plumbers. We're gonna go all the way towards the sun from the Palace of Justice, People's Palace of Justice, from Hawk Island, Montreal. Hawk Island, hot day, getting a little bit of hot. We're gonna go by the river, the mountains over there. That's what it is with that. It is a beautiful day, and we got a lot of things to be grateful for. And that's what it is with that, and that's why we gotta get on that rock and roll. And, you know, so it's something which I gotta get that LOVE. You know, and sometimes which we gotta get on that straight for the public workers, firefighters, bakers, butchers, nurses, doctors, correctional officers, beyond that justice, financially stressed, but gotta get that gratitude, you know. Always important to be grateful, thankful, and always important to say that gratitude. Grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bill's paid, got some food and paid my phone bill, and here we are. Palace of Justice, Palace of Justice, Palace of Justice, Palace of Justice. Sometimes we're gonna get that justice, that correction, you know. It's not easy to be free, financially stressed, but this N.A.C.P is always open for business, for pleasure, and gotta get that LOV, you know, somebody making love now and getting some of that good hamburgers, cheeseburgers for the fast food workers to get a little bit of that loving, and always for the truckers, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, those involved in the production, distribution of food, and all those involved in the distribution of food now, all those involved in the trucking business, all those involved in the firefighting, all those involved in the labor, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers. How about those welders with it? I guess enough of my face, eh? One more time for the Palace of Justice. We gotta get a little bit of that dude, and we got a rock and roll freestyle mode from the concrete jungle. We're not gonna go to the mountain today. Should we go to the mountain? Maybe not. 50-50 on the clock. Always grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bill's paid, and wearing all that red, you know. R-E-D, all that red, and it's of course all the way to the top for the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3. That is something which we got to the National Guard deployed. I'm no Trump supporter. It's always Dragon versus Trump, and you get that 50-50 with me, you know. I've been challenging a world champion Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-US border for the way to fuse the 63 best by the DRT, by my theory, the implementation of my DRT theory, and to the National Guard deployed. Sportsmanship, because this Quebecer Canadian, got that Canada tatted up, was born in the USA 3 times post 76. Once as a woman, twice as a man, in many past lives, many incarnations. Was born a man, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, and you get that 50-50 now. You just gotta read through a glass darkly, and that is something which we have to love, and to love on the appellation where we are, you know, to give it on that left or right and in the middle, and sometimes we just got to get a little bit of that finance and get a little bit of some money help, but it's not all about the money, because I'm financially stressed, and I gotta say that if I see somebody hugging, loving, that always gives me hope, because I always got to get a little bit of that drill for that foundation, and that is something which we got to get on that. Here in Montreal, Hawk Island, Island of the H or the A-W-K, Island of the Hawk. Gotta be watching how I'm marching, because I got Asperger's, and it's a neurological mental divergent condition, you know, but got a little bit of that clumsiness sometimes, you know, when I'm marching and executing my workouts, training programs, and which is now, it's 3:07 p.m. EST, past that 3 o'clock. That is something which we got to do, and something which we got to, of course, appellate always for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighter, the electricians. Gotta turn your heads left and right, left and right, left and right, you know, when we cross the streets. And that is something which we gotta be appellating about and insisting for public safety, you know. Myself as an individual, sovereign individual, and I love seeing this. People going, eating, people going. I saw somebody was rolling one, a joint one in the 3 o'clock, rolling a legal one, I guess. Rolling a legal one, you know. Rolling one of those legals. And it's something which we have to do, and we have to get on that go now, get that Pink Floyd shirt on that. And that's what I love to see, people safely, secure, safe on this hot day. Somebody rolling a joint there, that better be legal, because we legalized it in 2019. And people going, spending money, working, doing some exercising, and being, of course, lovingly free to do so, with some public hygiene and some public sanitation. And to my brothers and sisters who need some help, myself, it's only financial, economic, commercial. You know, we gotta rehabilitate our population, brothers and sisters who, for XYZ reasons, fell into some problems, economic, financial problems, or legal problems, you know. I wouldn't like to be a judge to take away anybody's freedom, liberty. Freedom is new, but look at these beauties. Gotta salute. I gotta salute the public workers. What a nice, beautiful flowers there. Look at those, thank you. And it takes some labor and some work, but that's what we gotta get doing with that. And that's what we gotta get this. And that's why we gotta get these flowers. And these flowers are planted by somebody for the embellishment of us all, for the well-being of us all. And it's something which we have, of course, to do. And we have to get on that guns and roses, or some guns. I think that Rock&Roll 2020-24. And that is something which we got. And elbows up, eh? Well, Dragon versus Trump, I got that Canada tatted up there. You can't tell me nothing, I got that Canada tatted over there. And that is something which I gotta be saying, you know, as somebody who is, of course, which is something which we have to understand, fully committed, that here we go towards the sun, you know, and we appellate on those things where we are, of course, to be just. And we got those beauties over there, beautiful clouds, and here they took the information away, but there was some information in regards to the city of Montreal and its foundations and whatever the case may be for the past. And that is something which we have to do, and we have, of course, to appellate. And of course we got some youth there, and me marching on the street all the way to my headquarters. That is something which we do, of course, in the appellation of the loving. And gotta have some loving and some work, and some firefighters are on the work, and some butchers are on the work, and some bakers are baking, and some are flipping those burgers, cheeseburgers in the fast food. Why am I stressed? Why am I worried? I was a bit stressed and worried. A bit stressed and worried this morning, but it's something which, of course, I have to do, and, you know, something which I have, of course, to integrate within my sphere of knowledge and my sphere of course, being different, because I'm an individual sovereign citizen who's different, who's part of this tiny, small fraction of the population, minority of the community, known as Asperger's. HFA, high functioning autism, and it's not a disease. I am not a disease. I'm good at some things, and we have some challenges or some difficulties in certain areas of social communication, social knowledge, and that is something which we gotta get doing with that. And that is something which we have, of course, to appellate, and all those things where we, of course, gotta enjoy our life, and our life matters, and, you know, it's something which we have to integrate fully and build bridges. We gotta build those bridges, whether we build small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. I guess those 4 categories are within the realm, of course, of the categories, and these are pretty nice flowers there. So it's just like, I get those 4 categories because it's just like ordering coffee, right? Or fries. You might order a small fry, medium fry, large fry, or extra large fries, right? Somebody ordered one of those 4, right? You might have ordered a small one, somebody else might have ordered a medium, somebody else might have ordered a large or an extra large. So those are the types of bridges we gotta build together. Because I don't have antagonistic feelings, resentful feelings towards you, the majority of the population, the 99.56% of compared to us who are less than 1 percentile, less than half of a percent. It's about 0.44%, eh? And those 0.44%, of course, we constitute on that. We are the aspies of the North American Collective, of the North American Civilizational Complex, and is something, of course, which we have, of course, to fully understand and fully operate in all our integral positions where we are, of course, as Quebecers, Canadians, North Americans, and it's something, of course, which we have, of course, to develop the geostrategy for the political observance of the 21st century, where we are not perfect, with flaws, with scars, with all sorts of scars on the body I live with, and some trauma, I guess, is internal, but I get that rock and roll or geopolitics, and then, of course, I am fully, and especially when it comes to that dancing, as you know, I am priestess H, Adrian Hannah Dragon, and priestess of the goddess, Dragon Zero, artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist, developing strategies for the North American Collective, and mystic. Hi, you guys have to go to the Belvedere. Speak English?
Yes.
If you have to go to a best place, it's called the Belvedere at top of the mountain.
Oh yes.
I've
heard of it.
Yeah, you have to go there if you're new and you're visiting Montreal. I don't want to bother you, but it's my favorite spot. You're gonna see the whole city from above.
Yes.
Belvedere,
Right.
don't miss it.
Well, look.
I'm probably gonna be there tomorrow. So you can drive up to a certain point, and there you have a chalet. You can take coffee. You can have a muffin. You have if you want to rest, but you have to not miss. If you're in Montreal, where are you guys from?
Virginia.
Not from Virginia, all the way to Montreal, Quebec. We love you. We love you here. You're our brothers and sisters. Bye bye. And please learn some French. Bye bye. Love you guys. That's why we have to get together, man. And that is something which you have to operate. And this, you see, this is from, this is history here, see? 1966. And this is another piece of history there. That's why we got it. And my brothers and sisters from Virginia, I always sing some rock and roll, but if they're tourists, I have to send them to Belvedere. You know that. Belvedere, Conjure and Acte. They have to go there. If you come to Montreal, you have to go to the Belvedere, Conjure and Acte. And you know, that is... that was just something what you gotta do, you know, to go to the Belvedere, Conjure and Acte, and so to learn them some French. Here it is, history of Quebec. This is actually only Montreal related. It's pretty cool here. See how it changed over the years. I wish I could paint these benches some color. Just they need some color, these benches, you know. Please, somebody give me the paints. Give me the brushes, give me the paint, I'll paint all these benches, you know. Just some blue or yellow. Just yellow. All of these benches anyway, so yeah, of course we gotta get a little bit of transition points, and I saw them with the map. I don't wanna, but if I see tourists looking for places to go, I have to send them to the chalet, Montreal chalet, the Belvedere, and that is just something which you have to do, you know, which is have to do on that love. But this one, just some orange. I would love to paint blue. Blue would be nice. Just blue, yellow, each one differently. Blue, yellow, purple, green. Blue, yellow, purple, green. Blue, yellow, purple, green. Don't you find that it'd be deserving a little color or something? Just some color, I don't know, just something colorful. It's just so great to me. I just get upset also about the ones at the Mount Royal, eh? So you know from my past videos that this is kind of a pattern with me and being upset about the benches being so gray, and you know, just bring me the tools, I'll paint, but it's so gray. Some blue or something, and that's what it is with that, and that's what it is. And bring them to me, I'll paint them, you know, all of them, all the benches in Montreal. I'll do it for I'll do it as a volunteering, you know. I'll do it as a volunteer. Just give me the paint and the tools, and that is, of course, those are 1967, the expos. Those ziggurats are 1967. That's when see those buildings there, that's in 1967, when the expo is a historical event here in Montreal. was 1967, so they were built 50 years ago. That's a ziggurat style, type of Sumerian style over there. Those are also need to be a little bit of paint on it because they're a bit gray also, but you know, I guess paint costs. I don't know how much the pint, and of course how much the gallon, the liter and kilo of paint costs is something which is costly and has of course a cost added to it. But who's the best producer in Canada? Largest producer of paint in Canada, in the United States, in North America? I guess that's quantifiable somehow. And I'm just thinking how many gallons would just take for me just to paint these benches from one end to the other end. I would estimate, I could calculate for the calculation, of course now we're gonna go into some N.A.C.P, but I guess for each one would be about 100, or be a tenth of, right, a tenth. So maybe with one jar, well it's not really a jar, maybe with one jar I'm able to paint 5 or 10. 5 or 10. 5 or 10. Maybe 5, maybe 10. 5 or 10. Maybe 5 or 10, whatever the case may be. That is something which we have to do, and that is have to do, of course, with that. That's something which we have, of course, to appellate in the domain where we are, of course. Just to paint, man. Just paint blue, green, red, yellow, you know, whatever. That's just, I guess, my little obsession. But among other little N.A.C.P weirdness, androgynous, pansexual, Hadrian Hanna Dragons, artistic rock and roll style dictums, and that's just how I live. If you see from my past videos that I've been wanting to paint, really to paint for a long time now. I wanted to paint those benches. It's not just for today, from today. It's not just out of nowhere, you know. It has a history, if you will. Although myself, with my history, it's kind of on the blackouts, you know. My life prior to 2014 remains a mystery. My life prior to 2014 remains a mystery. My life prior to 2014, spring 2014, remains a mystery because of that memory loss, triggered amnesia. I'm not going to hide it and go. And oh, that was so good, man. That was so good, and that is something which we have to be doing and appellating in the internal integrities of all of them. And if you do have them, we're here to get a little bit of that loving to get doing. And gotta salute, of course, those who build. Hey, imagine just to have water there. Imagine just to have water. Just water. It's all a privilege of civilization, which was my thesis back in 2023. That was my thesis, the privilege of civilization. So, being that it was the privilege of civilization, that was my thesis. And, you know, it's something which, of course, we have to do together in the implementation of what we are, to get a little bit of that corrections. And, you know, I'm not perfect, far from it. We know with Asperger's, it's a bit different and a bit more, has been a long journey of acceptance. I guess when I started accepting about 3.5 years ago, and I've been diagnosed for years and years and years and years, and it's just how I live, how an N.A.C.P lives is just different, and our way of communication styles can be more different, and can have, of course, the more difference in the aspects of our daily life and daily routines, of course, are revolved around certain traits of the characteristics where we're different, you know. So this difference is also noticeable right away in some people, right away in some work environments. People might detect that this is not in the normal sense, and it's not necessarily that it's not negative in the sense of bad, but it's just different in the way of how we interact, you know, sometimes, and how we just view the world. So Asperger's, it's not a disease first and foremost. It's just that we have these brain mutations, right? So these brain mutations make us see the world differently, right? See the world differently. So, for example, you see that I look at that structure. Now my brain goes into a little bit of mathematics. So I'm trying to figure out a little bit if that it's circular, right? So you see it has different patterns. So it seems that there's several layers of circular patterns. So see, one, you have a big one because you have lines. So you have the lines. I'm going to get closer. You know what I'm discussing about. Now my brain is trying to figure out what is the ratio, the proportion, the ratio proportion. So by how many times is that one bigger than the other one? I'm going to try to, of course, it's because it's on the ground. That one is not on a flat surface. That is going to be more hard to calculate. But just to give you a little hint of aspiness, how would a fellow Aspie would have probably discussed about this for an hour in the sun here. See, you have those lines, right? So you have one circle, then you have the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, then the sixth, and kind of like the seventh. So like it's kind of like circles, right? So the volume of this, or the area surface, or the surface, because the surface has to be calculated with the ratio and of course the pi, and then you have the smaller one. So that seems to be 4 times bigger than that one, and the other one seems to be twice as big as that one, and that one's the smallest, and that one seems to be exactly almost the closest that one in terms of surface and the size of them. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now in my brain there's certain mathematical computations, if you will, but it's only estimates because I don't have much information to work with, right? I don't have much information to work with, and it's only on that side. So what kind of, I couldn't be able to do it because on this side it's glass, so it's only from one side. Or for example, I'll give you another example. So here you see the squares. I will try to calculate exactly. Well, these are squares, so the area it's to the power of 2, right? So they're all equal because they're squares, so it's to the power of 2. So the area would be easy to kind of calculate, and then if you have halves, and half, we'll be able to calculate the whole area, but we have to kind of count them all because it seems that there's, well, okay, no, there's a pattern, and then you have a full one, a half one, 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 and then you have kind of a quarter one in the middle there. So just the Aspie brain is different, and we see the world differently. So the way we look at the world is different than the majority of people because of these mutations. And these mutations, of course, are not external, protruding outside of the brain. These mutations are, of course, interior at the microscopic level. At the microscopic level, you know, the microscopic level, at the micro level, the nano level. So think about it as microchips, as transistors. So these transistors are, of course, small nano at the nano scale. So being that they're transistors, kind of like at the nano scale, so happens to be those mutations, which are at the microscopic level. Internally, inside the brain, they're not outwardly visible outside the brain. And I just gave you like an example of Aspie characteristics, traits and characteristics. Or, for example, also this could be just counting how many bolts, stuff like that. It can be weird, you know, or just being preoccupied about with certain details that seem to be weird and bizarre and awkward, and numbers and bizarre details, which are, of course, bizarre details which are concordant to the point in being that we are different than a lot of people, than 99%, plus more than 99%, you would detect that, and you would know that there's something, but you wouldn't necessarily know that it's Asperger's. And some people, some more than others, because we don't know the exact percentage, because there's been a lot of work, might say that Asperger's is a disease, which it is not. I'm not a disease. And I've heard a lot of people when I was working say, c'est une maladie, that's a disease in French when I was working. And yeah, I have trouble maintaining work employment. Like many Aspies, the Asperger population, the employment is 80%. High unemployment is very high. It's unacceptable. So that's a big problem for Aspies that we encounter. So because we have these characteristics, which are traits, they're not symptoms. Symptoms is for a malady and illness. And we have these routines, ritualized routines, where we have these ritual-like routines which preoccupy most of our days. Most of our days are revolved around these routines, which of course make us different. That's a bit dangerous for the children there, because if there's children playing and the bolt is there kind of loose, you know, kind of loose, you can play with it. Sometimes children come here and it's kind of pointy. Well, it's not from here. It's somebody who left it there, but just because I decided to make this citizen intervention, and it's kind of just like I did in my past videos. You see with the knife, because the knife was on the side, and just to be careful, of course, that this, you know, children can pass by there, or somebody with the bike can put the hand. If somebody comes close and has to stop, he could put the hand right in it, and then it goes up and it goes in the hand. And I already have injuries and scars, and that was a bit of a prevention here. And I see blurred a bit, but not from that distance I can see, you know. But that's what could have happened, because he was there, see, but it was further down there. But here we have, of course, the bikes, and of course this could have pierced somebody's hand over there if they would have stopped and would have put it in. So just think about that. Like, it's, see, it has that pointiness here, so you could have injured somebody. So public safety, you know, it's important. Public safety, and you know, we gotta do our due diligence, and lots of people deserve second, third chances. Maybe it fell out of somebody's pocket, so it's not necessarily somebody's direct liability, because you have to give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it fell out of somebody's pocket, and that's an occurrence which can potentially happen. I just decided to take it because I decided that it's possible that somebody might just put a hand and it could get injured, especially somebody young on a bike, you know, because that's where it was. And a little bit of public safety, you know, and that's why I like to see people going a little bit on the bike and having fun, you know, freely, and they're going about their business on the daily, expressing their liberty by physical activities, by biking. And just like now, me, I'm marching, you know, always for the firefighters, truckers, bakers, butchers, nurses, doctors, and the plumbers, electricians. And if you so want, you have a nice place here. Thank you. Gonna be seeing you. I want to come once really early in the morning with the sunset. That's great that exists. Just clean it, you know. Clean it. I gotta bring my own cleaning, you know. Yeah, I gotta bring my own cleaning to clean a little bit of that. And I just want to donate my time to build a what do you call it? I just want to give my time to build something where you can drink water from there, you know. It'd be nice to have access to water. It'd be nice to have access to water. And it can be built. That's the only thing that's really missing, hydration. I guess you can find it close by, but you can also have that hydration down there. So Rock&Roll. So Asperger's is not a disease. It's not a disease. It's not a mental illness. It's just because our brains have these mutations, and thus we perceive the world. We see the world very differently from how you, the vast majority of the people, 99% of the population, you see it differently. It's because our brain processes information more difficult. So certain characteristics of the social nature of our brain doesn't process it that well, you know. Our brain doesn't process it that well. Our brains doesn't process it that well. Our brain doesn't process it that well, you know. So because our processes differently, so unwritten social norms can be more difficult for an Aspie, And for example, things which are personal space, we tend to breach the sort of personal space. We tend to get too close for some to breach the personal space, getting sometimes so close to 2-3 inches. That's Asperger's characteristics, and I always have to work on it. Because I gotta give a shout out, thank you to my anonymous friend who gifted me 2 books on autism and Asperger's, and 1 book specifically, which was rented 4 times because it was a library loan. It was a library loan on the other side, buddy. Keep the right side, just like driving. It was a library. It was a library loan. So it was loaned to me 4 times, and Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is a book which I recommend to Aspies and non-Aspies alike if you want to learn a little bit more about Asperger's. And I was diagnosed independently by people who have experience in the healthcare system, who have told me for like 8-9 years now that I have Asperger's, HFA, also known as high functioning autism. But I always refused it. I said no. I didn't want to accept it. Hey, who's you? That rock and roll, you know we be. Rock and roll, you know we see. RECA, you know that we don't play. Got some lying in the mud, got some lying, gotta say that. For you know I've been upset at. For you know we gotta love it. For you know we gotta love it. For you know we gotta see it. For you know we gotta be it. Left or right up in the sea. Wearing red, my favorite shirt. That's a lion, gotta be it. For a lion, what's the time on the clock? I see 4 letters. Gotta be up in the seas. And yeah, I love that red lion there. He's standing majestically. So rock and roll I'm good at, geopolitics I'm good at, sports and fitness I'm good at, dancing is my favorite sport. So I'm not so good at other things, but I have to be told that I'm somebody who wills to love, and I lust, and I am androgynous pansexual. I am part of the LGBTQ community. I've been out in the open for years now, for more than 8 years, more than 8 years. 8 years, So I'm not looking, friends with benefits only, don't want to waste anybody's time. You gotta be 18 plus, and friends with benefits only, so friends with benefits only. 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 So this river, this is actually a deviation of this St. Lawrence River. It goes all the way deep into the St. Lawrence, but this is actually man-made. All this is deviation from the river. So this is to embark. This has a very historical appurtenance. It has a very historical glance, historical importance here. This whole canal, historical canal. Historical canal. So that's just how it is in the daily life of us Aspies. We have these don't leave trash there. We have these weird, bizarre, awkward ways of seeing life or getting involved, the way we communicate can be, of course, a bit, I call it divergence. And when the question arises, or when the problems, because Aspies, we have some problems, and our problems are the 3 main problems. But again, just don't use the word disease. It's not a disease. And we have our strengths, and we have our weaknesses. Our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities are usually relevant to how we interact, and that sometimes we might not know the social circumstances or the feelings. We have to be let known directly. You make me feel uncomfortable, or this is offensive, or we have to be told, because we can ourselves be very direct sometimes, very direct or straightforward, or without a filter, without filter. They are like honest. The problem with honesty sometimes can cause some harm. So this honesty without filter, certain questions can, of course, make us bizarre, weird, or the social filter question it's not that. So we understand it from a different perspective, and we always have to work on the characteristics. But because our brain processes information different, the social The social aspects of life is where it's processed information in a different manner than the neurotypical brain. So due to of course the fact that our brains processes information differently is of course something which we have to appellate, or we have to put into mind that this difference is not necessarily negative, right, or evil or bad. That's where we have to draw the line, because it's not necessarily bad or evil or negative. So fundamentally, an aspect is not necessarily bad or evil or negative. It can be perceived at first. On a superficial level, it can be perceived as bad, right? It could be. But the superficial level, then you have to go deeper into what Asperger's is and what Asperger's is not. And according to the ABC, that is something which we have, of course, to drill on, and we gotta get on that rock-and-roll, to get it on the drill for the XYZ. And the butchers and the bakers, and of course all those involved in the production, distribution of food, as we are related, of course, on the go. So that is something which we gotta get on that appellation, and we gotta have to integrate in all the abilities that we have, in the functionalities, that although there's this impairment or this more problem when it comes to the social matter, when it comes to the social aspect, there are great strengths. But yes, due to our brain processing information differently, we have these great strengths, and as well as our uniqueness. But again, it's not negative, evil or bad. That is the characteristics. Yes, it can cause a lot of suffering. Aspies can suffer a lot, and Aspies myself have, especially when it comes to unemployment and all that. That is just something which we have the difficulty. Maintaining long-term employment, maintaining friendships, maintaining long-term friendships, maintaining employment, and long-term friendships. Long-term friendships. It's problematic for Aspies. And of course, high depression, suicidal rates, lack of friends, these three, and the lack of employment. Or not necessarily we have, usually myself, if I look in all the jobs that I had many just keeping them. Because in the workplace is designed for neurotypical. So, for example, gossip, our brains might block. Our brains just would block, because we process, so we would be like, okay, how do I respond? What do I say? Because the person's not there, they're not discussing solutions to the problems or ideas, they're just discussing the individual. So our brain processes different, the information, so we would block. We would probably not be a lot of Aspies, You know what I'm saying? Because myself as an Aspie, I never bought a gossip tabloid, at least from my memory, because 11 years ago, 2014. So our brains processes information differently. And so of course we block. So we block that. Our brain doesn't fully compute, So we might not know how to engage in that from just our brain not being able to process the information the same, So it was just different. So that difference that's just how it is, and we live with that, So yeah, we wouldn't be able to just engage in that gossip, which is kind of a social requirement, of course, a social dynamic, of course, to be. And it's something which, of course, we have a social dynamic to be, and that is just how we are. So we wouldn't be engaging in gossip necessarily because we don't understand it, we don't get it, our brain is different. So these things can be more difficult. And so since the workplace is made for the 99% you, which I have no antagonistic feelings towards, in the past 3.5 years, I just learned to accept myself fully, how I am, with all the weirdness, all the difference, being not just that I'm androgynous pansexual, but in relation only to Asperger's, Aspiness, how I view the world differently, how we Aspies are part of a tiny minority of 0.44%, less than 1%. less than 1%, that is of course about 0.5, less than half of a percent of our brains due to these mutations. And according to the ABC documentary proposes and says that they have a documentary that ABC, that Asperger's is actually an evolutionary process. Now I don't know about that evolution because I suffer, struggle, been depressed, been suicidal. That's another hit. It hits us more than the neurotypicals, depression and suicidal rates. But it's something which we have, of course, to say. So that's the mountain. And I give you a concrete example. So if I say to somebody, sometimes you might ask, how are you? I might say directly, how I am. If I'm not feeling so good financially, I'm going to say I'm a bit stressed financially, I'm a bit not so well financially, or XYZ. And if somebody apologizes, our brain says, right away computes it differently. So I say, why apologizing? It's not your fault. That is not your fault. You know, so that is something which of course we have, of course, to appellate, of course, to be immersed in. So you see it even in one of my videos, somebody apologizes, it says, sorry to hear that, and then I say, what are you apologizing? It's not your fault, and it's not, because that's not the person's fault that I'm financially stressed or that I'm feeling that way. So, but it's, you understand, it's just a way to socialize. But Aspies, we don't necessarily get that, understand that, process that properly. So we say, why are you sorry for? Because it's not your fault. If you're able, of course, to use, to make my situation a solution, then yeah, let's find a solution. But if there's no solution, or if it's just verbosity, we might not necessarily console verbally. That's where the empathy compassion problem is with Aspies. Yes, I have compassion. Aspies, we have compassion, empathy, but we show it more by action, more by doing something, finding some solution, helping in a more, see, that's where we are, fighting in a more practical manner by some help. Love your construction workers, let's build a fort. So that is, of course, where the whole distinction comes, of course. And that is, of course, the whole distinction. And this distinction comes from the brain processing information differently. Love your construction workers, let's build a fort. So this brain difference cannot be medicated. There's no medication for Asperger's. You can understand it, I can manage my characteristics, but at the end of the day and for a long time I will remain an Aspie. Here's the Operation Northern Scorpio, which we gotta get doing, and I love this place here. Shows, of course, our integral composition, but of course it's something which we have to understand fully, that this difference, that Asperger traits characteristics, is not evil, is not bad, is not negative. That's where we draw the line, and that's where you antagonize myself and fellow Aspies. It's not negative, it's not bad, it's not evil. It's divergent, it's different, but it's not negative, it's not evil, it's not bad. According to the ABC, it is an evolutionary process. It is an evolutionary process for mankind. It is an evolutionary process, of mankind's evolutionary process, according to the ABC documentary. Now, I'm not going to pronounce myself because I have to review it. So I don't know. This documentary seems a bit... Hey, look at that. Swimming. Oh, wow. That's getting a little bit of that. I guess it's allowed. So it's not negative, it's not bad. That's where we have to draw completely the line. It's not negative, it's not bad, it's not evil. And it's not a disease. Now when we establish that, then we can proceed, because otherwise we'll be at an impasse. If you designate Aspiness, Aspie characteristics and traits as bad, evil, negative, or a disease, we're not going to be able to build the bridges. The small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges. Those 4 types of bridges which we gotta build. Like that one is probably a small one, but just like ordering coffee or fries, you order those 4 categories. So with different individuals, different categories have to be built. A different size of bridges have to be built, right? And that's just how we have to build them, because that's just Aspie bridges between us, myself as an individual sovereign with Asperger's, and you as a neurotypical, because I have no antagonistic feelings towards any neurotypicals. Neurotypicals. Because we have a lot of things more in common that separates us, except for a few bizarre, seemingly bizarre, evil, bad, negative to some, but when you get to understand it, you get to read that book, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, and you can see that Aspies love, Aspies feel compassion, Aspies feel empathy, but we show it, of course, we show it in a positive way by, of course, positive manners, of course, and in a way, of course, which is by action. By action, by action, by action. So by action rather than by verbosity. So watch it for the kids, man. Watch it for the kids. Gotta slow down for the children a bit, you know. So this characteristics makes us to some weirdos, but weird, awkward, and bizarre is not evil, bad, negative, or malicious or anything like that. It's not that. And I'm pretty joyous. I'm just financially stressed, My only stress now is financial. And so I gotta watch not to get hit by the car here. Turn my head left or right and wait a few seconds and cross the street. I got some cars crossing, and that's something when we have to get, and that's something when we gotta get on that go. And wait a bit, wait a few seconds, and a few more seconds to cross the streets. Now. So that is something which we have to do. We have, of course, to operate on that go, and that is something which, of course, we got to get on that love, and that is something which we got to do. So that is just where we are in the daily occasions of our lives. So our lives usually revolve around these special interests. So these special interests, and again, just to define Asperger's, is a neurological mental divergent condition, because we see the brain, we see the world differently. We see the brain differently. We see the brain differently, and because our brains are different, we have these mutations, and thus we see the world differently. But I would love to paint these just so gray. Just bring me the tools, bring me some blue, some red, some white, some yellow, just some color. Just paint them all. That is what it is with that, and that's something that I really just bugs me a bit. I don't know, just the color, just so gray. It's just I get a bit upset, I guess. Just bring me the tools, and I'll paint. Just paint. Not a problem. So that's how I'm gonna show my love for the city, by actually doing, because I'm an Aspian. That's what Aspies do, I guess. And I'm not evil, I'm not bad, I'm not negative. I'm an androgynous pansexual Aspie who's also an artist, an athlete, a geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist and thinker and philosopher, and of course a mystic. My androgyny comes mostly from being so many times in past lives incarnation born a man, a woman, a man, a man, a man, a woman, 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 a man, a man, a woman. That is just something which we have to be, and we operate on that dictum, and we have to operate by the norms of you, the 99.56%, with which I have no antagonistic feelings towards. And yes, we have three main problems. The problems for Aspies are, lack of friends, and friends with benefits only from now on. Friends with benefits only from now on. Friends with benefits only from now on. That's the solution. Don't want to waste your time. Don't waste mine. Friends with benefits only. 11, I like that. That's 22. So friends with benefits only is the solution. Don't 18 plus you gotta be. Gonna play that black, white, and rainbow. Androgynous gridiron loving. Some of that good rock and roll loving, but you gotta be 18 plus for that. I'm gonna card you just like when you go in a bar. Now we're gonna get a little bit of more hydration. And I guess I'm gonna pause it because I'm gonna go in the washroom. But the washroom's closed. So I'm not gonna hydrate. Although I should just a bit. And wait a bit. So the problem, we have three main problems. Lack of friends, there's the solution. Friends with benefits only for me. So with friends with benefits, then of course we have the employment question, rather the unemployment question. Unemployment. The unemployment question. The unemployment question. Too hard. So the high unemployment for Aspies. The unemployment sits at 80+%. That's 4 out of 5. Can you imagine how big that is? And that is something which we have, of course, to apple in. Of course, we have to get under loving. But it's 80% plus, more than 80%. That is just something which we have, of course, to apple in. And of course, we have to dictum on that XYZ. And that is something which we have, of course, to get it on that go, and we get it on that good loving, you know. But yeah, 80+% for Aspies, the unemployment is high, super high, way too high. It's unacceptable. 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5, 80+% unemployment. And it's not that we don't have employment, we don't have jobs. It's just that we have a tendency to not keep them. We have a tendency to not keep them. Because I have many jobs in the past 10 years. It's just, of course, not being able to keep them. Not being able to keep them long term. That's the problem. Sometimes it's 4 months, 3 months, 2 weeks, 4 months. You know, it's I have many jobs, especially during COVID. It's just keeping them, which is problematic. So maintaining long-term employment, just like friendships, I made a lot of friends. It's just I lost most of my friends, and friends with benefits only. You know, it's not something that, of course, is problematic for me. And I got the solution: friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance, Legion special. Because my dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, which we're gonna get to, is important. So those 3 problems: lack of friends. Solution is friends with benefits only. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Or pledge your allegiance to our family. And the other position where we are is friends with benefits, or of course friends with benefits, or open for business. The other problem is friends with, like I said, you know, friends with benefits, or pledge your allegiance, support the empire, the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. And parallel to friends with benefits is, of course, the other is lack of long-term employment. Unemployment for Aspies stands at 80%, 80+, more than 80%. It's totally unacceptable to be so high. And it's again because of the workspace is usually created for neurotypical, so thus, you know, we can't really engage too much. We might make an effort and engage, but we're always going to be Aspies at the end of the day. And during the work, I guess, if we would just go do the work tasks that's required, if there's the tasks that's all required, whatever the case may be, the tasks that's required, that's it, that's all. And we just gotta get, you know, that's it, that's what we gotta do, and that's how we gotta get on that appellation, and that's it, that's all, that's what I get going with that. So that is just the appellation where we are. And of course, and the things that what we do is that we are different, right? So this difference is, of course, visible in the workspace and visible in the communications. The way we interact is different. The gossip, it's hard to process for us. We might just be blocked, our brains block, and then we, you know, it's an Aspie, so it's hard for us because the brain is different. But even we kind of would be blocked on what to say exactly. So the workplace is made for the neurotypicals. Majority does change, and I changed a lot. But of course we have these dynamics, and these dynamics are, of course, also confluence to whatever the life kind of throws at us. Like I said myself, it threw a lot in the past years. I was depressed and suicidal, lost so many jobs, and now I try to manage, because it's no medication because it's not a disease, so I have to manage the characteristics of Asperger's and be aware of the bridges that we gotta build: small bridges, medium bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges. So consequently, that in the workplace, the majority is made for the neurotypical. So for us, the ideal would be just to do the work, and just sometimes be more direct and say, okay, stop talking because you're talking about a subject I'm not interested, or you're too close to me, stuff like that. So that is just how it's best suited, more that work, more directness in terms of sometimes communication more directly, and be related to more the tasks and what's required to be done at work. And I guess if it's customer service, you have to be polite and serve with a smile. I could do that, and I'm pretty joyous, loving. Actually, I want to love and I want to see other people love. I don't need much support, and Asperger's like some require more support than others. And as an individual sovereign with Asperger's, I require a certain support, but a limited support nonetheless, because of our special interests, which can require a lot of time of our daily routines and ritual habits. We have routines, right? We have ritual-like routines. So these ritualized routines are usually conversant to a specific milieu, specific locale, which of course we are to serve. And of course, if I am to serve in certain characteristics of certain spaces, I will serve as best as I can with politeness and whatever have you. Because I like to serve, I guess. I have some experiences volunteering and doing some volunteering, this and that. Doing some of that volunteering to get it on the go, but it's something which doesn't necessarily add to. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes it doesn't add to specific characteristics where we have, of course, the specific characteristics. So those specific characteristics we have, that we have to always manage. So managing those characteristics can always be a little bit on more difficult side. That is something which, of course, we got to manage, but there's no medication. See, that's geopolitics right there. So somebody would vote, of course, for geopolitics. If you're into geopolitics, that, of course, you sign is, of course, something which you have to get interested in, of course, in all the dynamics where we are, of course. Now, that is a geopolitical relation, of course, to be, and of course, the geopolitical space is always related to all the lives that we are. Watch it, because you're crossing on the green. Better wait a little bit, and of course that is to cross on the green with that, and that is something where we have to appellate, and of course we have to get prudent, of course, in the side of the things, and that is just something where we have our dynamics. Crossing the street prudently is something we're doing with that, and we gotta get on X, Y, Z, and that's what we gotta do, That is just something we gotta live with, and that's just life. Yeah, of course, to live, and consequences, and me as an Asper, it's been a tough journey, it's been a tough road, but I'm happy now, smiling. And of course that joy comes from also having healed a lot, I guess, from my own trauma. If you asked me before 2014, my life remains a mystery. I got Robert triggered amnesia in 2014, spring 2014, I used to live in a very moldy underground basement, very small, it's like a tight prison cell, and it was like a tight prison cell, but it wasn't really a prison cell, but it has, even the bathroom was super tiny small, like my little thing, I guess, my little clit, sometimes goes rocket up, rocket high, God is blessed, but of course, it was an underground moldy place in N.A.C.W.P, and of course, that is something which, of course, we have to get doing on that. We gotta get doing on that XYZ, and that is something which we have, of course, to love with fully. So that is the 2014 spring. My memory before that, spring 2014, spring 2014. Spring 2014. Spring 2014. Spring 2014, Spring 2014, That is something we have to get. And spring 2014. 2014, that's a long time ago, 11 years and 4 months. I used to live Côte de Neige on the island of Montreal, and on the island of Montreal. On the island of Montreal. On the island of Montreal. That is something which it is, and that is something which we go, and that is something which we gotta get doing with that, and that is something which we have to live, you know. So it's something which we have to do, and something which we got, and something what we gotta get doing on that drill, and that is something which we have to do, you know. So this, of course, sometimes just being in discussion with an N.A.C.P. or involved with a discussion with an N.A.C.P., you would know that there's this difference, you know. This difference would be detected, of course. Would be detected, of course. Would be detected, of course. And of course, that is just how we live. This is a nice boat here. I kind of like this boat. That it is what it is, and that is something where we have to get doing with that. And that is something where we gotta get on that appellation, of course, to be and to live on the side of the things where we are, of course, involved in the life-affirming lifeness. Because we like to love, I lust, I like to see harmony, and people working out, people training, and in the public, I guess. Somebody got a little bit of that good loving there. That's what's important, that's allowed. I love to see that, you know. People making a little bit of loving there and fighting and arguing, you know. And yeah, just finalizing on Asperger's before I get into geopolitics and rock and roll. These traits, characteristics, which an N.A.C.P. manifests can be odd, strange, bizarre, weird, awkward. But they're not evil, negative, and bad, or malevolent. And they are due to these mutations and due to the fact that we see the world differently, you know. Due to the world, we see the world differently, our brain processes information differently, and we are different, right? N.A.C.Ps, we're different. And in communication styles, in our little obsessions, we have obsessive interests. Those obsessive interests, I call them special interests, because obsessive interest is more for a neurotypical. While me, when I spend hours and hours and hours involved in the study, the analysis of geopolitics, that is where I'm at home. That's my domain, pretty much, along with rock and roll and along with sports and fitness and along, of course, with whatever the characteristics, of course, is to appellate in the plurality where we have, of course, to live together side by side. And in a parallel life, I'm an N.A.C.P. super scientist. I build, design satellites, sats, microchips, supercomputers, and everything to do with telecommunication exercises. I live in the year of darkness. It is October 29th, 2029. It is October 29, 2029 in the year of darkness. October 29, 2029 in the future parallel self. That's what I build. Supercomputers, microchips, 3G, 4G, 5G telecommunications, and that's all I do, and that's all I built in the appellation, of course, that building those telecommunications and building all the things that I gotta be building. And that is just something which, of course, I have to appellate on a daily basis, where, of course, I have, and where, of course, all those life-affirming forces are. And, of course, we are in the domain, in the plurality, where we are involved, of course, in all the life-affirming forces, where we are my kingdom of the sun. And, well, the declaration is, Asperger's is not a disease, it's not evil, it's not bad, it's not negative, it's not a disease. The neurodivergence, yes, we have some problems, we have some difficulties in the social sphere, mostly in communications and with employment, with lack of friends, or we lose friends as we lose employment, and high depression and suicidal rates. I was depressed, I was suicidal. I crossed Canada coast to coast, coast to coast, coast to coast. 2017, so I'm celebrating 8 years now. 2017, I crossed Canada in 2017, and of course that is just something what I gotta be doing on the go. 2017, I crossed Canada coast to coast. In August, of course, 2017, I crossed Canada. I went all the way to Vancouver, BC, 3.5 days by bus. And of course, in September 2017, correction, it's been 8 years, 2017, September, 25 hours and 11 minutes. Wait, 25 hours and 44 minutes. 25 hours and 44 minutes. I gotta double check, but yes, 25 hours and 44 minutes, almost 46 hours, 25 hours and 44 minutes, 2017, September, from Montreal to Halifax, the train, and we went by bus in 2017. I have the tickets, so that event, crossing Canada coast to coast, that's of course where I have to say that we gotta get on the left and on the right, and I have been advocating for citizens, of course, to be financed to travel. Travel is so important. So I crossed Canada coast to coast. That event made me come out of being suicidal and depressed, and of course whatever the case may be, depressed and suicidal, and of course all the appellations where we have to remember that traveling made me come out of my depression of being suicidal, because I was depressed, suicidal a few years, about almost 3 years, I guess, 2015, 2016, 2017, more than 2 years and a half, big depression, almost took my life, suicidal, depressed, and here I am, suicidal, depressed, and here I am. That is something where we have, of course, to confirm it, and of course we have to get on the roll and the rock and roll, and that's what we got, on the side of the things where we got to get that appellation to get, for the XYZ, and that's what we get. That's what it is with that, and that's what we have to, and that's what we gotta get doing, And that is, of course, something where we have to appellate, and of course we have to get on the doing of the life, of course, to get it on that. And that is, of course, something where we have, of course, to appellate, and of course we have to subjugate, and we have to get it on the side of the things where we are, of course, involved with. And that is something where we got to get our involvement with, and something to get our, of course, all our dynamics, because that is, whether we like it or not, we are different. Yes, we're marked in many ways, but it's something where we have, of course, to appellate, and of course to conjugate, and we have to live, and we have to N.A.C.W.P in a neurotypical world, which sometimes is easier than another. Yeah. Been through hell, I've been through hell, so not negative, bad or evil. Asperger's is what Asperger's is, and it's been a tough journey of appreciating, even thank you, anonymous friend, for donating me the book Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Of course, that book made me open my eyes of my own vulnerabilities. As general aspects, we have certain vulnerabilities because we don't necessarily know certain things, and we don't really know certain things in the societal manner which we are integrated and appellated, of course, to be, and of course to live with this neurodivergent can sometimes be more difficult for some than for others, and has certainly been tough for me to accept it for years and years and years, I've been told, and kind of diagnosed for more than, but different individuals with some healthcare experience the past 8-9 years, and that is just what I have, So now we're gonna go into my domain, my realm. You need to leave the baggage at the door. Aspies, we have special interest, and those special interests, also known as obsessive interest, but I said I don't use obsessive, because obsession is more for a neurotypical, but me, when I'm engaged, when I write, when I analyze, when I study, when I revise, and of course that is also a major part of our full ritual life routines, because we have these routines, and most of those ritual life routines are surrounded around or involved around are revolved around those special interests. And those special interests for me, a holy trinity: sports and fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport. Rock and roll, always rock and roll 24/7. And sports and fitness, rock and roll, and geopolitics. So if you want to work in those three, plus the fourth dimension, some good rainbow loving of that 18 plus. But of course, it is something which of course has to be the dynamics of the fully understanding to be. So of course, that is the appellation where we have, of course, to represent the dynamics where we are involved. So basically, and in essence and fundamentally, we have to. Here's Louis Cyr. I met Louis Cyr in a past life. Met Louis Cyr, it was 1904. We did some arm wrestlings, We did some arm wrestling in 1904. So of course, all the complementary, where we have, of course, the complementarity to be and experience life. In our experiences as species, those special interests have a major part of our lives. A major part of our lives are revolved, of course, around those special interests. And now we have these routines. Myself, I have a ritual-like routine. And this ritual-like routine can preoccupy me when I'm involved in working out, training, or marching, and meditating, and doing geopolitics even now in my head. Sometimes I walk the street and I do geopolitics 24/7. It's pretty much the same. So now I'm going to enter in geopolitics. Being an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, philosopher, and strategist, the first thing I'm going to say, because it's one of the most important, is that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, October 2019 to be specific. In October 2019, I have predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. An international conflagration, you heard that right. In other words, a World War III. So, and it seems that although my memory blacks out before 2014, it's like I have trouble accessing my memory, my life part. But 2014 is always, that's a long time ago, 11 years and 4 months. 11 years and 4 months. That's a long time ago, eh? 11 years and 4 months, yeah. That's already a long time ago if you think about it. 11 years and 4 months. Yeah, about spring 2014, I have trouble accessing my life. My memories prior to me moving from that moldy underground place where it was like underground in N.A.C.W.P, small moldy place. There was really a small basement, tiny basement. I didn't even have a proper kitchen. The kitchen was kind of in my room, and it was one room and a tiny small bathroom with a tiny small no bathtub. There was no bathtub. I took a shower it was like a small prison cell, really. So I don't know. I remember I was living there, and maybe before that I was a junkie, an alcoholic. I don't know if I did drugs. If I did drugs before 2014, how many years I spent there. But of course I don't have a birth certificate. I gotta go check it out, and of course gotta get, of course, those characteristics. And whatever, the most important is my work in the past years, especially since 2017 around. After my depression, most of my work, artistic, geopolitical, is that's most important than my memories or whatever I was with all the scars. And I remember being I survived a vicious surprise attack. A vicious surprise attack. I fell, hit my head on the concrete. Was bloodied up, and had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, had a dislocated right shoulder, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital. And they replaced it, cracked it back, and I was put on some meds. I was put on some medications. I don't know what kind of meds it was, but I was put on some meds, and that is of course something where I was put on some meds, and that is of course something where I gotta say, but I was put on those medications, and that is of course just the medication that probably was given for pain, but I don't know exactly what it was. It was probably just medication for pain. or something like that, but that is something where I gotta go check with the archives, and I'm gonna go at the Jewish General Hospital. Probably gonna go soon by September 11th, and that is just something where we have to do, I guess, to go and get those archives. Those archives are probably gonna, either 2014, probably around that time. So I survived that vicious attack, a vicious surprise attack, and yeah, maybe trauma to the head sometimes causes memory loss or injury to the head, trauma or onset of a disease, and that is something where we gotta get doing with that, and that is something where we have, of course, to live with in all the operations where we got, and that is sometimes of consequence where we gotta get going on that matters, and that is something where we got, you know, to get drilling on that love, and gonna cross the street here brutally, and that's where we're gonna cross. So of course all the appellations and all, of course, the side of the business where we are, of course, to be engaged with, and that is something where we got our characteristics, you know, the characteristics. Look at that, that must have been nice one day, eh? Those flowers there are red. That is something which we got, and yeah, probably something nice was stand there, but I guess it got scribbled up, and that is just, of course, the side of the things where we are, of course, where we are to stand, and I don't know, whatever caused it. Maybe my aspiness, maybe I was too direct, you know. Got some questions, and I ain't afraid of no gangsters. 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 So yeah, I survived that. I live with plenty of scars on the body, and dick live if that's a scar, whatever the case it is, and whatever all the surviving, all the trauma, whatever case may be, here I live in the present day, joyous, happy, financially stressed, but no longer depressed, and no longer suicidal, no longer depressed, no longer suicidal, no longer depressed, no longer suicidal, and that's just something where we have, of course, to do, and gonna get a little bit of that hydration there. That is something where we have to go. That is something where we got to be, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. That's something where we have to be, you know. And that's something where we got that appellation to be, and you know, to get on that drill, man. Do some exercise, and I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, eh? I don't like violence. I just do not like violence. If you want to put sports, you want to do gloves, you do sportsmanship, yeah. You do in the arena, just like me and Donald Trump will. But besides that, I don't like violence. So back to geopolitics. Remember, whatever my life was prior to spring 2014, which is 11 years and 4 months ago. 11 years and 4 months, wow. 11 years and 4 months, spring 2014. 11 years and 4 months. That was a while ago, you know, so that was a while ago. Think about that, wow. 2014, 11 years and 4 months ago. That was, of course, something which it is, eh? Time duration. I love how this tree is just splits like that. Look at that. What is that? See? It looks like it's not really candy because it's not a maple. See that? It kind of looks like it's, but it's not maple syrup because it's not a maple. It looks like maple syrup, but it's not. But it kind of looks like it, see? It's got that color. See those things? Look at that. It looks like maple. Is it maple? No, it's not a maple tree. So no syrup, no. But it looks like it, see? This is kind of what it is. Kind of gooey. It looks syrupy, but I don't know, maybe it's good. You tell me, say, oh yeah, that's syrup, man. Canadian syrup. It's going to waste. Pick it up next time. No, it was not a maple tree though, so. The point is, now we're going to go into geopolitics, my domain, my kingdom, my realm. Geopolitics, we're entering leave the baggage at the door territory. In 2019, I predicted what's happening now. However, what I did not predict, and this is important for one to fully understand and compute and integrate in one's being, what I did not predict, okay? What I did not predict was the current deterioration of relations with the United States, which alarms me. And now that I mention it, I get a little bit of shivers. Supposedly, from my journals, I got that tatted in New York. Wait a few seconds, hydrate, and then we're going to discuss geopolitics. Oh yeah, that was good. That was some good, you know, that was some good drinking. Some good water. Hydration is important, and as we're gonna go, you know, for a few miles. We're gonna have a mileage on the way, and that's why we go. And back to geopolitics now. Watch it for the children, it's not sanitary. Maybe some children there. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty. I guess it's gonna be clean soon. And turn your heads left or right when you cross the street. Got that Quebec flag spotted, but got that Quebec flag spotted, flag of Quebec there. Flag of there. I got both Canada and the fleur-de-lis, you know. Both Canada and the fleur-de-lis, and that's what it is pretty much with me, and that is something which we have, of course, to appellate in, of course, in our life-affirming liberties and structures of living there, and that is something which we have to. Oh yeah, for the 63 by the Omen. Sector 63. Oh yeah, Omen. Sector 63, double Omen. 63. The 10, the 50, and the 3. For the empire we rise, baby. So, whatever the case may be, you know, that's something which we have, of course, which we have a little bit of that rock and roll, and we have a little bit of that rock and roll to live, you know. It's something which we have to be loving about, and have to be reminiscent about, and we have to get it on the go. And I predicted that there's gonna be an international conflagration, but I did not predict that there's gonna be the deterioration of relations with the United States. So I did not predict what's happening now between us and the United States. That has to be understood, because this is new for me as well. This new development, this unfortunate new development in the past months, and of course when I started challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match in 2018, and have been ever since 2018, I've been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match. My anonymous friend, I got those gloves in the backpack. I'm all red, so I'm wearing the other backpack. I'm all red, so I'm wearing the other backpack. And I got the black backpack and got that black mane on, but yeah, I got those red gloves in the back, auctioning everything that I'm wearing. So been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 20. Ever since 20. When you cross the street, people in here, watch when you cross the street. Gotta watch it, turn your heads left or right. Sometimes they come fast by that side, you know. That is something where you gotta go here, man. Because if they come by that side, the brakes don't always function. The brakes don't always function, you know. So the brakes don't always function properly. And of course, due to the fact that the brakes don't fully function, that is of course the fact where we of course have to live with all this divergence here, and we gotta get it on that side and ask. C'est possible que j'aille tout droit de même vers l'hôpital par ici, par la gauche?
Oui.
Ok, c'est ouvert?
Oui, tu passes ici, là.
Je passe tout droit, il n'y a pas d'empêchement, ok?
Non.
De toute manière, j'ai les bas de travail à ça. C'est quoi vous faites? C'est quoi la machine?
Ah, c'est pour prendre la compaction. Vérifier la compaction.
Ah ouais, c'est-tu fait au Canada, cette machine-là?
Oh, ça, tu vois pas.
Je peux-tu regarder?
C'est peut-être...
Canadien, Québécois, et États-Unis, c'est pas pire.
probablement que c'est américain. Ouais.
Ah ouais. Ok, je me demande, Troxler, j'ai jamais vu ça, je suis curieux de la provenance.
Ouais.
Tu sais d'où ils sont fabriqués, là?
C'est...
Ah ouais, c'est pas marqué vraiment.
Les années 80, c'est sorti, ça, ces machines-là. Puis,
Ah ouais,
c'est Troxler.
Troxler, là.
Ouais, ils ont pas mal la cote. Il y a d'autres marques, mais nous, au bureau,
Troxler.
on a 90%.
Je suis pas mal sûr que c'est américain.
Ça le va.
En tout cas, je ne veux pas vous déranger.
Dans Angleterre, mais
Ouais,
c'est pas chinois, en tout cas.
Non, mais le plus en plus, il faut qu'on produise locaux, je pense. Il faut qu'on commence à se débrouiller, là, parce que qu'est-ce qui se passe dans... Je pense qu'on commence à avoir plein de l'industrie qui recommence ici.
C'est pas mal spécial comme appareil, fait que c'est...
Mais je pense que des Allemands bombardiers, là, avec le cerveau d'Allemands bombardiers, on va pouvoir en fabriquer de même. Salut! C'est pas moi qui va le faire, là! C'est pas moi! I have a little bit of, I asked where the machine was built, and I said a little bit of joke, as I can joke a little bit, but I said that's the Troxler, and I asked where it was, Quebec, Canada, but that machine supposedly was from the 80s, so I'm curious where the machines are fabricated, and I said, you know, with the Armand Bombardier, the brains of Armand Bombardier, who's a famous Quebecer, we would be able, but then I said, it's not going to be me that's going to be able to do it, because I won't be able to do it necessarily, because I don't have the brain of Armand Bombardier, but, you know, it requires brains, and these workers here, public workers, they sing some rock and roll. Public workers changing some aqueducts. Thank you. Changing the aqueducts, gonna give us some water. Water on the ground. All the aqueducts on the ground that are now replaced, it's always a work, and always gotta give a moment. Saluting the public workers of the Collectif of the Empire. For the 63 we be, That's what it is with that, and you know, they got some jobs, and my fellow cousin there's got some jobs, and they got some money for the work, and he's got some jobs, and he's got some work, and he's got that work, and I'm unemployed, always looking for business, but I always wonder how it's encrusted underneath, you know, all the work where it's done, you know. It's always a work. And all the civilization being a privilege, that was done with the aqueducts, with the brains, the muscle, the steel, the underground cement, to do it integrally and to provide us with clean water. Civilization is a privilege. Think about that. Just the things we take for granted. Now, of course, my brain is a bit of a meditational state, of course, integrated with geopolitics, because public works projects is a major geopolitical act. In many ways, it's a geopolitical act. So this contributes to our geopolitical security, wellness, and well-being. This is geopolitics one-on-one. Our public works, it takes both the public and the private partnership. Our public workers, their health and their wellness and their well-being, and of course not just the salary, but our public works have to have some pride, have to have some esprit de corps, because it's our North American civilizational complex, of which here in Quebec, La Belle Province, Canada, we're part of the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3, which we need to fuse via my DRT theory, because fundamentally, as I'm going to make the statement now, our most important interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations, military defense relations with the United States. And that you cannot say no, 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 no. You cannot say maybe. That is a geopolitical constant, which of course I'm going to repeat it. Which of course needs for me, I need of course to repeat it. Because it's super important, because I did not predict what's the deterioration of the relations with the United States. I did not predict it. That I did not predict. I predicted an international conflagration back in 2019, a geopolitical international conflagration in 2019 in October 2019. 2019 in October 2019, I predicted an international conflagration in October 2019, but not a deterioration of relations with the United States. And now the statement which I'm going to make is a constant geopolitical truth and reality, which has to be accorded with a yes, 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 yes. In the affirmative, it cannot be negated. You cannot negate or say no or maybe to the statement. As Quebecer Canadians, Quebecers, our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, defense, security, at all levels, relationship, the best with the United States. That is just like the pie, not to be confused with an edible pie, apple pie, chocolate pie, vanilla pie, or blueberry pie, or any other sort of meat, bacon pie. That's edible. The pi symbol represents a mathematical constant. It is the relations. It is the relation with the circle. It is always the number 3.1416. 3.1416. Always the number 3.1416, and it's always the relation with the circle. It's the circumference and the relation with the circle. So that never changes, and the symbol is an N. N, the letter N. N just like for Normandy, natural, neurodivergent, normal, neurotypical. The N letter, N. For natural, normal, Normandy, neurotypical. So that N has two heads, two faces. It's like two-headed, two-faced. Two-headed, two faces, two heads. So that's our empire. The 63 will have like two heads, two faces. One for benevolence, one to punish, one for goodness, one for punishment. One for goodness, one to punish, one for benevolence. That two-headed, two-faced of that N. The N, of course, which is going to have the N, has that two heads, two faces. And thus, that N represents the ratio, the circumference and the diameter of a circle. So that is always the same. It does not change. It does not. That's a constant. Mathematical constants are always unchanging. So the number is always 3.1416. 3.1416, you know? And that number 3.1416 goes ad infinitum. It's the relation between the circle and the circumference. The circumference. The circumference and the circle. The circumference, the ratio with the diameter in the circle for the circumference of the circle. So that number always stays the same. So thus our reality has been so for decades, it is so today, and it will be so tomorrow. Our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, security, military relation with each other. Economically, politically, socially, military, diplomacy, social, cultural, sports, to have the best relations with each other. The best relations with each other. The best relations with each other. Is to have the best relations with each other. Economically, socially, financially, at all levels, is to have the best economic, social, financial, cultural relations with each other, right? With the United States. With the United States. So that is just the pronunciation of that dictum. Has to be a yes, 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 yes. It cannot be no, 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 no. It cannot even be maybe, 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 maybe. It has to be accorded a yes. You cannot negotiate with that. And that's reciprocal for the United States vis-a-vis us, though, as well. So it's reciprocal. It's not just us vis-a-vis the United States. It's not just Canada vis-a-vis the United States. Right? It's also the United States vis-a-vis us, although the United States, you have also You have also you have also borders with Mexico, and I'm saying this as somebody who was born in the United States 3 times. Ça va? Oups. Ouais, je viens de voir je viens de voir un sticker, un collant vis-à-vis le référendum. Oh, il y a là-bas un sticker pour le référendum. Non, mais ils disent qu'ils voteraient oui maintenant. Tu voterais-tu oui, toi?
Oui.
Tu voterais oui pour un pays?
Oui.
T'es souverainiste?
Oui.
Tu voterais oui? Moi je sais pas. Je voterais non, là. Mais je sais pas si je resterais. Peut-être que je resterais, là. Je restais quand même ici dans un pays. On a enlevé le roi, là, le roi Charles, tout ça, là.
C'est une occasion manquée qu'ils ont eue. Moi, mon père est français, ma mère est italienne.
Ouais.
Ils ont immigré.
Mais t'es québécois maintenant?
Pardon?
T'es québécois maintenant?
Ouais, je suis
Comme moi, t'es québécois même.
Ouais, ça.
Fait que tu voterais oui? OK. Ouais, ben moi là, je veux dire que j'ai la confiance que les Québécois, on va se débrouiller pour... Si, mais je voterais non, par exemple. Fait que moi, je voterais non, là. Je voterais non, mais j'ai quand même la confiance que... On est capable, là. Mais je voterais non, là.
Mais de toute façon,
Mais qu'est-ce qui m'énerve le plus, là, c'est que notre premier ministre, il a prêté allégeance au roi Charles.
Ouais, tout le temps ça.
Le roi Charles, c'est...
Ben, tous les fonctionnaires de la police fédérale, il fallait qu'on...
Il est absent, le roi. Il n'a pas bâti l'Hydro-Québec, il n'a pas bâti tout ça, il n'a pas bâti les femmes.
C'est comme ta mère, elle venait ici, la reine Elisabeth II. Elle a fait plein de visites ici, parce qu'en théorie, c'est notre reine. Ben, sur les dollars, hein.
Ouais, mais je pense que c'est quand même quelque chose qu'on aurait dû finir, ça fait longtemps. Là.
Ouais. Ben, on a rapatrié la Constitution, donc
ouais.
ça fait... C'est juste... Ça vaut pas grand-chose, c'est juste comme PR, tu sais, la reine, elle va tout dans ses Commonwealth aussi.
Ouais. En tout cas, moi, je pense qu'on aurait dû finir, ça fait longtemps avec ça, là. La reine puis la monarchie britannique, là. Même symbolique, on aurait dû finir.
Ouais. Surtout qu'elle est décédée, la reine. Tout le monde aimait la reine.
Ouais. En tout cas, fait que ça, tu voterais oui, hein?
Ouais. Regarde ça, là, l'Ouest, ils vont probablement se séparer avant nous autres.
Moi, je vais être honnête avec toi, là. Moi, je soutiens plus qu'on s'intègre avec les États-Unis. Je suis pas un partisan de Trump. Non, pas avec Trump. Je suis pas un partisan de Trump, mais moi, je suis pro-fusionnement avec les États.
Ouais, ben René Lévesque, c'est un peu ça son idée, c'est d'avoir un Québec indépendant, mais avec des liens très forts avec les Américains.
Moi, ouais.
Vous avez même adopté le dollar américain. C'est fort, le dollar.
Moi, ça me dérange pas de fusionner, là, tant qu'on continue avec d'avoir le français au Québec, là.
Ouais,
c'est juste ça. C'est juste ça, OK. OK, fait que toi, tu voterais oui.
Le Vermont, le Maine, tout ça,
ouais.
Ils sont très près de nous, là, au niveau, pas juste géographique, mais au niveau de... C'est sûr, ils n'ont pas le...
Vermont, oui.
Le Vermont.
Maine. Massachusetts. Les plus proches, là, Massachusetts. J'ai de la misère à prononcer ce nom-là. Avec trop d'S, là. 4S, c'est trop pour moi. Comment? Oui, c'est ça. Le Boston, là. Ouais. J'ai de la misère.
Les gens-là sont très... Les démocrates sont bleus.
Ouais.
Ils sont aussi très environnementaux.
Ouais.
Parce que, tu sais, dans le fond, les démocrates et les républicains, ça se ressemble. D'un point de vue québécois-canadien, ça se ressemble beaucoup.
On a plus en commun avec les États-Unis qu'avec l'Europe, quand même.
Ouais.
On est des Nord-Américains, là. Si on... Ah, ils aiment ça.
Ah oui.
moi, j'ai l'Asperger's. Tu sais quoi?
Ouais.
Ouais,
moi aussi.
Toi aussi? Ah ouais?
PSA numéro 1.
C'est quoi ton... Ah, c'est l'Asperger's, ouais.
Oui, c'est ça. Asperger, 10 Asperger.
Ah ouais? Santé! Moi, c'est Adrien Dragon. Le dragon. Ah ouais? C'est quoi ton intérêt, toi?
Mon intérêt...
As-tu des intérêts obsessifs?
Ben là, je vais avoir 50 ans.
Ouais. Ouais.
Mais tu sais, les jeux vidéo, ça, c'est...
OK. Ah ouais.
Certains auteurs, tu sais, j'étais obsédé avec Jack Kerouac, là, j'ai...
Kerouac, OK.
Jack Kerouac.
Ouais. On the road, OK. Je connais un peu, pas trop, là.
Mais c'est une obsession, la Beat Generation.
Ouais.
C'est-à-dire lui, puis
Moi aussi, je suis bien content d'en connaître un autiste aussi.
Toi,
Ça
c'est quoi
fait
ton
toujours.
intérêt?
Moi, c'est plus la géopolitique, le rock'n'roll.
Géopolitique, ouais, c'est intéressant.
Ouais,
Moi, je
ouais.
suis géographe environnementaliste.
OK. La géographie, mais le Québec, c'est combien de régions, ça, là, le Québec?
Le Québec, des régions.
17.
Il y a 17 régions.
17. Ouais. 1, 7, 17. 17. Ouais. Ben, tu sais combien d'États qu'il y a? D'États?
Qui?
Aux États-Unis?
52? C'est ça?
50.
50?
Ouais.
Ah
Pas
ouais,
pire, t'es
ouais,
proche,
ouais,
t'es proche, là.
Ouais, moi, mon intérêt spécifique, c'est l'Asie du Sud-Est. Tu sais.
C'est quelle, laquelle?
L'Asie du Sud-Est, c'est-à-dire.
Ah ouais, le sud-est de l'Asie,
Corée,
ouais.
La Corée, le Vietnam, mais la Chine aussi.
Ouais. La Corée du Nord aussi, là. Je connais par cœur l'idéologie juché, là.
Quoi?
En Corée du Nord, l'idéologie juché, l'idéologie qu'ils autres ont adoptée, c'est une sorte de communisme, le communisme qu'ils ont adopté en Corée du Nord, c'est spécifique à la Corée du Nord, ça s'appelle le juché. Juché. Ben, juché, là. Ils ont adopté ça, puis c'est particulier à la Corée du Nord, c'est un socialisme nord-coréen, mais un petit peu mélangé avec une sorte de spiritualité nord-coréenne. Là. C'est unique, ça n'existe pas en dehors de la Corée du Nord. Leur idéologie, c'est juché, parce que c'est ça que je connais. Hein. Je connais la géopolitique.
Ouais, j'aime ça.
Oh.
J'ai appris chinois à un moment donné, j'ai appris un peu le coréen.
Ah oui, t'as déjà été en visite?
Non, malheureusement, non. J'avais une blonde vietnamienne aussi, fait que c'est comme.
Ah, de quoi?
J'avais une blonde vietnamienne aussi.
Ah ouais, ok. Ben, moi, je suis LGBTQ.
Ok.
Je suis aux hommes, aux femmes.
Ah, ok, bon. Ça t'en fait le double. Ok, bon.
Ça J'aimais ça. Ouais, j'aimais ça. Ça t'en fait le double. Ouais. Je suis célibataire, là, mais. Les horizons, là. OK, mon cher. Fait que tu voterais oui, hein? OK, je vais vous compter. Toi, t'es le premier aujourd'hui qui m'a dit oui. Jusqu'à soir, je compte. Ciao, ciao. So, that was a fellow. He mentioned he's on the spectrum, he's got autism, and that was really cool. I had a little bit of exchange, and I asked him about what would he vote? And he said about having a girlfriend from before, and then I said, I'm part of the LGBTQ community, and he said a little joke, which I kind of got at first, and I said, you're gonna do double, because, if you're LGBTQ, he was fond about it, ça t'en fait le double, ça t'en fait le double, ça t'en fait le double, you're gonna have double. But the dogs, I can't let them too close because I start sneezing, So I love dogs from afar, but their fur is not that big and thick. It's the other fur first. But poodles I can pet the best. Poodles I can hug. I can have them in my bed all over me. But other dogs I can't too much because I start sneezing, especially the long fur ones. But this one doesn't have that long and thick. The thickness and the length. So just the length, So fellow autistic, fellow Asperger's. He's not Asperger. He's not an Asperger, but he's also on the spectrum, autism, and he would vote yes, interestingly enough, because I saw the sticker. So that's a Quebec question here, and I told him that I am for fusing Canada and United States, and he mentioned Renewal, which Renewal kind of this historical, social, cultural figure here in Quebec, how he would merge Quebec and Canada, and he would merge Quebec, Canada, well, actually Quebec and United States. We have to look more into that. I know a little bit about it, but I'm not an expert on Renewal. We have the Renewal street there, but it's of course something which we have, of course, to discuss. So he would vote yes for Quebec being a sovereign, separate, independent state, a sovereign nation. And I joke in my ass ways that is about the king, because the king is absent, fellow brothers and sisters Canadians. The king is absent. It would have been time for the Republic in the 90s, in the 90s. And that is something, of course, which was in the 90s, and something which, of course, we have to, to appellate, and of course, we have to integrate vis-a-vis that, but it's something which, of course, we have to conclusively state in our missions that we are pro my way to fuse Canada best, and Granddaddy Trump, he wasn't no way to invite Canada by tariffs and different tariffs which he imposed. And especially now, this alarms me, because this imposition of tariffs has been a major mistake from the way to deal, because with Canada, and of course paradoxically to invite us, and yes, the greatest state, but not one state, 13. We're gonna add 13. 10 plus 13, just like the initial 13. So we're gonna get for that 63. But the consequences that we have now, gotta salute our ambulance drivers. Send some love to our ambulance drivers always. When you hear the sirens, just slow down your car. When you hear the police, slow down your car, slow. Press the brakes a bit, look around you if you're a driver, and you hear the ambulances, you hear the firefighters, you hear the police. Cars, can be repaired, and we got a beautiful highway here which was built with the brains and muscle of public workers, sweat of the brow, and we got all this privilege, to get the highways and the trains, and all the highways and the trains, which of course are now doing the transportation. Gotta give a shout out to the truckers, because the truckers are internal and integrated in the trucking business. Is all the trucks that are going east, west, north, south now to go with all the goods, all the bacon, the cheese, the hamburgers, the bread, all the goods which we eat are so important and integral for all our civilization and continuity, especially for the youth, but all ages, of course. And I gotta give a shout out, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of 5 almost. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of a little bit of a hanging gardens. It's a beautiful public garden, which I love. See, it has layers 1, 2, 3, 4, and the brains and the muscle who build it like this. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of 4 layers to the public garden. And thank you. I love passing by here. I find it's a nice embellishment, and this beautiful color, my red, my favorite, which I'm wearing now, auctioning my underwear, the socks, the pants, the shirt, $1 million each. You get 4 million, gonna give half, 50% to my anonymous friend, and that's just something which we have, of course, to live with and to appellate, and of course to construe on love, on love, and be of the situation where we are now involved with all our dynamics, where we are to love and to do action and to work and to socialize. And I'm glad I got to socialize a bit with a fellow N.A.C.W.P. Well, not really an N.A.C.W.P. He mentioned autism in French, autistic, and he knows he's got some special interests. And Kirak, the author, which I don't know much about, I know my geopolitics. He laughed because he asked me a question and I responded right away. I know when it comes to geopolitics, countries, states, and statistics in relation to states and capitals and all that surrounds, the capitals and the provinces and kind of territories. But I'm not an expert. I still learn myself. I revise sometimes, I'll be much better with being less financially stressed, would enable me to do even more good work, and always open for business, And now we're gonna go back to geopolitics. So now I'm gonna say, of course, again, that our main interest, and this is reciprocal for both Canada and the United States, is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. So us vis-a-vis the United States vis-a-vis us. So this is a reciprocal. We have to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, democratic relations with the United States. And that is just, of course, what it is. We cannot, of course, say no to that. You have to say yes in the affirmative. That is a constant. And of course, that constant is, of course, always the same. It does not change. It is always a constant, not a variable. Just like the N letter with 2 heads, 2 faces, 2 headed. It's like an N with a head on the one side and another head. It's like a conjoined twin, that N. And it's a conjoined twin, but it's 2-headed, one body, kind of one, if you want to think about that way. That's why our empire will kind of be like 2-headed, 2-faced. One to punish, one for benevolence, for goodness and kindness and benevolence and love. The other one for punish, justice, correction, and There's karma, correction, punishment. Beautiful yellows. So that is just how you cannot negotiate with that because of our geographical realities. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, we got two oceans. We got the Atlantic and we got the Pacific. So due to the fact that we got the Pacific and the Atlantic, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, that is the motive. Why? The motive. How come? That is a true fact, a true statement, which cannot be negotiated. You cannot negotiate with that fact that our main interest is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States, and the United States to have the best, most cordial relations with us. So you cannot negotiate that fact. That is always a constant. That is always so. That is not to be negotiated with, and you cannot say even maybe. You have to affirm it in the positive with a yes, 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 yes. Whether you're on the right, on the left, in the center, center right, center left. Even like my fellow artistic, who would have voted yes for Quebec to separate, just like that sticker before, 44 seconds before, almost 45 seconds before I started talking to him. That indicated that that person who put that sticker would have voted yes, because this is still an ongoing North American geopolitical question. The Quebec referendum is still an ongoing Quebec geopolitical question, and most of the people that I encounter personally are no voters. I would vote no. I would vote no. But that is a relevant North American geopolitical topic. So that explores fundamentally how we are in the integrity of all our well-being and all our dynamics, where we are to live with and, well, of course, to enjoy. As Quebecers, we are about 9 million, right? 9 million. Canadians now, we're close to 44 million, right? We passed 44, I believe, this year, right? Got to double check, because some brothers and sisters decided to come join us from outside of the world and came to live here with us, and from outside of the world, from immigrants who decided to come join us in the great dominion. It's going to be the Republican Empire, the Imperial Democratic Republic, when we're going to fuse Canada and the United States soon. Let's sign those perpetual imperial documents on September 11th. That will be consequently what we need to do the most. What we need to do most. So that is just the officiates where we are, of course, to officiate some things where we are integrally and in the domain and in the dictums of our well-beings, where we are to constitute the fusion of what I call the North American collective civilizational complex, of which we had for decades, both Canada vis-a-vis the United States and the United States vis-a-vis Canada, so that we work to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, diplomatic, social, cultural relations with each other. That is just, of course, the main premise or the main geopolitical fact or reality, as we are vis-a-vis the United States and the United States is vis-a-vis us, right? So that is always a constant reciprocal. That is always a constant. It's not a variable, so that cannot be changed. We cannot argue with that. Our historical, and it has been so at least since Canada became less and less dependent on the King and of King of Canada, and of course is the dissolution of the British Empire. The dissolution of the British Empire occurred, The dissolution of the British Empire occurred slowly after the Second World War. So after the Second World War, there was this dissolution of the Imperial Britain, the British Empire. Of course, that change after the Second World War, because before they had a pretty much dominion, but it started being dissoluted after the Second World War, right? After the Second World War, because the Nazis attacked the British Empire, right? Some call it the Nazi Empire, but I say the Nazi Germany, right? Empire, I guess it became, right? Because they conquered some countries. So yeah, I guess for 3.5 years, from 1940 till about 1944, for 4 years, 4 years. After they annexed Austria and they conquered France and Poland. Yeah, for like 4 years. 3.5 to 4 years. 3.5 to 4 years they were an empire, yeah. They were the Nazi empire. So yeah, I don't mind you saying, but only for 4 years or 3.5 years about. But regardless of that historical fact, today, and it has been for decades, our main interest is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. That is just the fact. You cannot negotiate with that. And I'm just gonna go there to change because it's getting hot. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna change my pants from these red ones, because I still gonna march in the sun, and put some sunscreen, because I think it's about 5, so we got 3.5 hours of sun left. So I'm just gonna go here and change. Basically, I'm just gonna change. I have underwear, so it's not a problem. I'm just gonna change here, so I'm not gonna get naked. No, you don't get naked in public. But we're gonna continue, I guess. But I really gotta do it, because it's getting hot, and we're gonna continue with geopolitics after. So this is what I want to do, right? This is what I have to take I want to just replace my red pants. Gonna replace my red pants. It's getting hot. So with these, the red for the green. There you go. Woo, much better. Now it's getting hot. I didn't think it was gonna get this hot. Earlier when I left, it wasn't that hot, but now it's getting hotter even. So I guess we're gonna do some more marching in the sun. It's important to get it properly. And that's just what it is, and that's just how we do it. And that's just how we rock and roll. That's it, and that's just what we got, and this is what we do, man. That's changing a bit, and rock and roll, and geopolitics, and back to business. I just love coming here. It's just the breeze and the terrain here is very nice. So, yeah, much better. Auctioning those red pants, auctioning these green ones. Oh, what a difference that makes. That makes such a big difference. I really hope I didn't forget anything, but yeah, much better with these. Because I looked so that nobody was coming, but that is something which we have, of course, to get. We have to get it on the go with that. So, yeah, now I can discuss back to geopolitics. So our main interest is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. That's our main interest. You cannot negotiate with that. You cannot negotiate with that. You cannot say no. You can only say yes, 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 yes. So that is a constant that doesn't change. That is always the same. It never... So it's a constant, right? So we have that established. And of course, the establishment that's a constant. Then we have, of course, to move vis-a-vis the constant and where we are ourselves today. Being that we are today in this dimension where I did not predict what's happening now with the United States. It's new for me. It's new. So it's new for me. And this newness, this rather situation, that it's new for me, we have to take now into account. So back in 2019, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. An international conflagration. An international conflagration. So I predicted that there's going to be an international global conflagration, but I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. So that is new for me as well. So I have to account for that. Me, myself, I have to account for that. As well. So I have to take that into account. Right? I have to take that into account. And fully, because it's a new development, and now I gotta say something which, of course, alarms me, makes me upset, and even worried for our well-being, because every time I discuss it, it gives me kind of goosebumps. Since August 1st, give me a few seconds to put my belt properly back on. Yeah. Since August 1st, Canada, we're designated, or the designation for us, according to the White House official statement, and the August 1st was the day when the United States government, Trump administration, decided to impose tariffs, to not just to impose them, but to increase the tariffs. So increasing these tariffs, the United States did increase these tariffs. Increase the tariffs from 25 to 35%. Justified, or the justification was that the amount of fentanyl that crossed into United States from Canada tripled from 2024, and could have it's written there in black and white on the White House official statement. It could have killed potentially 16 million Americans. What? Just because fentanyl is so potent. And on fentanyl, I haven't tried this fentanyl that's on the streets that the transnational criminal organized syndicates are peddling. More and more, I'm quantifying it as a bioweapon, not necessarily a drug, because a drug, right? You would think that the dealer, the producers would want the person to keep on buying, and, I guess being regular customers. But if they're dying, if so many people are dying of overdoses, it seems something's not adding up to the traditional drug trade. To make money, finance, and that's just more and more I'm quantifying this fentanyl, at least that the transnational criminal syndicate organized groups are putting on our streets as a bioweapon. As a bioweapon. More and more and more and more. Now, regardless of XYZ ABCD, the point is, the fact is that the RCMP, which is the equivalent of the FBI, have already warned us now for years and years and years and years. They have warned us that they have warned us. So they have warned us about. First, they warned us for years that there's a growing transnational criminal organized syndicate groups, establishing themselves in Canada. Since around 2015, they were sounding the alarm. Cash, 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 cash. Why'd you do that? Do something nice if you can do it. Otherwise, just don't do it. If you can do real art, do real art. Then I encourage it. But no, I don't encourage it, but I tolerate it. You know, if you can do real art, like really nice graffiti art, then I'm gonna say, you're an artist. You know, not bad. But if you're just scribbling like that, no, don't do that. Not in the public, at least. So that just is the fact is that last year, on the 24th of October 2025, the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever drug laboratory super lab in the history of Canada. Oh, look at that. That's elderberry. Red and black together. Nice color together. These are nice, but don't touch them. But that's from elderberry, eh? That's from the elderberry. Remember? Because we did the elderberry juice. It came out really nice. And I did 4 bottles. I still have 1 left. 4 bottles. And next summer I'm going to be doing, in June, July, 44. I want to do 44 because there's so much that goes to waste. This is all elderberry, eh? So these come from elderberry flowers. See? Come from elderberry. These come from elderberry flowers. That's the remnants of the white flowers converted into these black. The white flowers kind of turn into these dark purple, blackish. See? That's just the elderberry. So that is the reality that in last year, 24th of October, (24th of October) (24th of October) 2024, correction, 25th of October 2024, last year, 25th of October 2024, it's not been a year yet. It's gonna be this year, 1 full year. The RCMP in BC, caught the greatest, biggest ever super lab, drug super lab, which had produced 95 doses of fentanyl, 95 million doses of fentanyl in that biggest ever super lab dismantled, which could have produced enough fentanyl to kill the population of Canada twice over. And they seized guns, all sorts of automatic guns, handguns, rifles, like 4 different types of guns. So that was a transnational criminal organized group, a transnational criminal organized syndicate. transnational criminal organized syndicate. And we've been warned about growing transnational criminal organized syndicates since about 2015, and then it got worse and worse and worse. 2015, 2016, 2017, the RCMP sounded the alarm even more hardcore during COVID. Since about December 2020, 2021, for years and years and years, they were warned us. There's a growing transnational criminal organized groups, and now, since August 1st, Donald Trump's administration pinpoints as a major problem this transnational criminal syndicate organizations as being a main problem to the motive why they have increased tariffs on Canada. So this gives me goosebumps, because we are at risk, and a geopolitical risk. So us to be designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people, it's something that we do not want, and vice versa. We do not want, because we're North Americans, we're one big North American family, we have a common history and a common destiny to unite. Our Imperial Republic and Perpetual Union, the 13 territorial states, 10 provinces and 3 territories. We're gonna add 13 states in the 50 states, but we're gonna do some constitutional amendments to make it the Imperial Perpetual Republican Union, and we're gonna have to fuse the population of the US with our territory. It's gonna have to put for the 21st century, for the total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, via my DRT theory, to totally, for BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, dominate the 21st century in the manners, which of course we're gonna fuse and create 2 complementary governance institutions, and also mass finance the rehabilitation of our brothers and sisters via my DRT theory, which requires a mass public-private partnership. So all our integral aspects, the fact that we're designated as an threat, as an unusual, an extraordinary threat to the United States now, is something which of course we are designated as an unusual, an extraordinary threat to the United States, to the American people, since the 1st of August. This has never happened in modern history, and the reason is given. And although not so much fentanyl is crossing from the northern border, but what's true is that the growing domestic production, the domestic production from transnational criminal organized groups has occurred and is occurring for many, many, many years now, as the RCMP sounded the alarm many years ago. Just like I sounded the alarm from back in 2019 in October. I have the proof, because I have the videos discussing it, and my creation of the workout training program system, which I created, which is made to go hand in hand with such a scenario as it is today, that I created that workout training program system to go hand in hand with such a scenario. And of course, where we are today, in today's world, we are of course fully integrated and fully implemented, where we are kind of, perhaps not officially yet, in a World War III mode situation. And my prediction was that due to the unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, that those conflicts are going to restart and re-emerge. And for the most part, if you see what's happening now in the world, are those conflicts from the 20th century which have re-emerged, especially during the Cold War period of 1947, which lasted from about 1947 till 1991. I placed the Cold War duration period for 44 years and 9 months. Some say 45, some say 45 and a half, some say 46. I'm willing to say more than almost 45, but I stick with my 44 years and 9 months usually, but I can say 45 or close to 45, yeah, close to 45. Gotta give a shout out to the train conductor. See how my brain now works? I don't know his wellness, his being. The train conductor gotta be saluted, and we have to have an esprit de corps, and we have to implement also not just my DRT theory, but also the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, to integrate and to establish a strong esprit de corps, and to totally be integrated and connected with all our public and private institutions and organizations. Because my dream, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, is fundamentally a call for a mass public-private partnership to fuse Canada and the United States via a mass public-private partnership, and integrate, for example, fuse the RCMP and the FBI, get rid of the border, create 2 new complementary covenant institutions, the 63 legions for total S, total D, security, service, and defense, for security, service, and defense, to totally formulate for total security, service, and defense, to formulate totally for security, service, and defense. I know that this train is going east, because I'm marching west. It's going east. What does it carry? I hope the train conductor's good, the truckers are good, all our workers are getting better and better, and my DRT is implemented. You know, we are open for sabotage and espionage. That's why my total Dragon 911, new Dragon Army total protocols for the total security, total service, total defense of the North American Collective is something which, of course, we have to appellate and constitute, and of course we have to drill, and we have to go, and we have to appellate, and of course we have to, completely say and state that it's possible that it's carrying things that are vital for the continuity of the North American civilizational complex, for the continuity of the North American civilizational complex, for the continuity of all the things which we do integrally and in part, that is such a big and beautiful train that it has some security potential for potential sabotage and espionage, or sabotage due to what I call DMA or A. That requires a whole series to do it. Anybody wants to finance, open for it. DMA stands for DMA, and or A, it stands for direct military assistance or action, what I call the DMA. So in other words, due to DMA, A, by NATO member countries, of which we're part of NATO, just to summarize the philosophy, we have potentially created internal hostile diaspora community groups and hostile nation states, powerful nation states, XYZX, even close to being superpowers, that might employ transnational criminal syndicate organized groups for sabotaging internally our well-being, economic, social, financial well-being in the internal integrity of the North American Collective, or NATO, across NATO, because most of my theories are North American centric, but some, such as this DMA, applies to our NATO military alliance, of which we've added Sweden to make it 32. Who's going to be the 33rd? 33rd. And of course, my theory for the Dragon Army can be expanded to be legions across all the other NATO member countries for total SSD, but preferred fundamentally, first and foremost, for the North American civilizational complex, for North America. So now on these marching steps, some meditating steps, is that our, saluting the truckers, the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, that they're carrying elements which are so vital for our North American collective, and that's why we need to create these 2 public-private partnership institutions, the Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Republican Citizen Integrated SSD Legion for total security, total service, total defense, and to establish programs and actions to establish a strong esprit de corps with the North American collective. And of course also the Dragon Army parallel to the DJ, aka the Imperial Integrated Dance League, to dance for the environment and nature, for the environmental aspects, environment, for nature, for education and action. You see some of my videos, I film inside a garbage can, and you see how many things are supposed to go in the recycling. So there's work to be done in all aspects of the pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist. It alarms me that we are now designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat. So being that we're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat, that is of course the consequence and the prudence, of course, that we are designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat, but it's consequently that this threat comes from not necessarily us, but we are of course being, it's mentioned that we lacked coordination with law enforcement from the United States, so that our law enforcement, the RCMP is like the FBI, the National Federal Police, and the CSIS, like NSA, National Security Agency, but because we lack coordination with law enforcement from the US, and fentanyl has continued to flow, and illegal immigration and what have you. But a big border like ours, we have to fuse together. We have to fuse. 21st century, but here we're going to have one of the 63 we're going to have to continue the French language because we're millions of Quebecers here. We just have to make an effort, just like my brothers and sisters at the beginning of the video. I'm from Virginia. Hey Virginia, gotta make a little bit of that French, and it's best if we fuse, you know. So that is something which we gotta do, and we gotta get on that appellation to be integrally in all the domains where we are, of course, to get on that situation and get, you know, sometimes some problems, some solutions to certain problems, you know. And right now, one of it, just like mine own is, financial, economic, commercial, by paradoxically, of course, via the DRT, the debt refusion theory, via the DRT, the debt refusion theory, via the DRT, the debt refusion theory, which I'm now going to explain. But again, just to finish that, the DRT, the debt refusion theory, has to be implemented binationally because it's part of my bipolar Imperial strategy for total BDD, benevolence, dominance, and dominion of the world by fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican complex. But here, when I discuss the bipolar theory is, of course, the bipolar theory which we have, of course, to consequential, and of course we have to consequential where we are, of course, involved. When we are, of course, involved in all the systems and the prudence that we are involved in certain manners, of course, where we are involved now in our naturalness, myself with the aspiness, myself with my difference, and all our hundreds of millions of North Americans, both Canada and the United States, which some of them are now working, doing XYZ, some of them now truckers, bakers, butchers, nurses, firefighters, electricians, the plumbers, always myself as an individual sovereign citizen, placing myself in the imperial context of solidarity, always with the 63 at all levels, neurotypical or neurodivergent, right? Because we got that coast to coast, ocean to ocean. So the bipolar strategy has nothing to do with psychiatry or psychology. It is merely and only and strictly a bipolar, as in relation to being a geopolitical strategy. That's why it's called the bipolar geopolitical strategy, which has nothing to do with the bipolar condition of psychiatry or psychology. Is the bipolar, as in relation to Canada and the United States, to be fused into the imperial complex for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world via this imperial fusion, and the subsequent implementation of the DRT, the debt refusion theory, which we have to implement as soon as possible because we are close to a financial collapse. We are close to a financial collapse. It is possible that we have a financial collapse tomorrow, maybe it started today. I know that train is now going west. Some are going south, some are going north. In 2023, for the first time, we fused the trains so that, of course, the trains can now go all the way to Mexico. Kansas City, right? And Pacific merged. The biggest ever merger in North America. I don't know if there's other bigger one than that, but it can go all now for the first time since 2023. We can go all the way to Mexico City. Mexico. So the three countries are now linked via one railway that you can go all the way to Mexico. Before 2023, I believe June they merged. Kansas City and Pacific, right? Pacific Rail, Kansas City. They merged in 2023. Biggest ever merger, maybe in the world, maybe ever in the world, in terms of merging train companies. See this one, I don't know what's carrying. Maybe I see blurred. I was prescribed some glasses, but financially it says liquefied petroleum gas. I think that's what it says. Well, even the numbers I see them blurred, but I'm not gonna spend. I don't have 120 to spend on glasses now, even if the government will cover like half the cost, but it's still gonna be too pricey for me to. But sometimes I see blurred, you know, for the vision there. So that is something which we have, of course, to do, and we have, of course, to appellate, and we have, of course, to conjugate in the manner, of course, which we are intensely to work on, of course, holding eye contacts. I don't want to wear eye contacts though. I don't want to wear eye contacts really. To be honest, I don't really want to wear any eye contacts, not even glasses. I could do without, but nonetheless, see blurred, maybe eat more carrots. Okay, back to the geopolitics and DRT. Now we're gonna have to discuss fully the DRT, debt refusion theory, without any other discussion. The DRT, the debt refusion theory, is my theory, is part of a major geopolitical strategy, of course, to implement, which of course we have the implementation of the DRT, the debt refusion theory. The DRT, the debt refusion theory, to be implemented for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit. The Universal Exchange Unit. So, D, debt, R, refusion theory. We have four main problems which are affecting us, both Canada and United States. That's why my DRT theory has to be implemented binationally, Canada and United States. Because since due to the fact that my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, is integrated in it, monetary integration theory, MIT, monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory, which was implemented in the European Union. Look at those beautiful clouds. It was implemented in the European Union. In the European Union. In the 90s, the Europeans, they destroyed their national central banks and they created the ECB, European Central Bank. They no longer have in Europe, they no longer have a national central bank in Europe. Right? They don't have a national central bank in Europe. They have a central bank, a common joint multinational central bank that serves many nations integrated in the European Union, right? In the 90s, long ago, more than 25 years ago, they destroyed their national currencies, right? They destroyed and they annulled their national currencies. So they destroyed, see Kansas City, southern New Mexico, Kansas City. So this is Southern Lines, Union Pacific. So we merged the CP, Canadian Pacific, and Kansas City Rail. Anyways, so in my DRT theory is integrated monetary integration theory. That's what you have to fully understand, right? To fully comprehend. Inside my DRT is integrated monetary integration theory. So here it is explained. So we're gonna take I gotta discuss the motive. The motives why we have to implement it. So the four main motives, we have four main problems that are affecting the majority of brothers and sisters in Canada and Quebec. In Canada and Quebec. And those four motives are, in whatever order you want to place them. You can place them differently. So in whatever order you place them. One, again, they can change the order, but the growing cost of rents, even my rent went up between $6 and $10. So $6, I'm not gonna complain because I think for me it's fair, but nonetheless, I'm not gonna give an exact number how much my rent went up. I'm gonna say a minimum of $6 to a maximum of 10. So ranging between 6 and 10. Ranging between 6 and 10. So that range between 6 and 10 makes us okay with being, see? CPKC. I believe that's the new logo. Canadian Pacific, Kansas City. That's the new logo for the merger. It happened in 2023, more than 2 years ago, and it's the biggest ever, at least from a North American perspective, bigger ever railway company. So these four problems, the growing cost of rents, my rent went up also, but I can't complain again. The stagnation of the salaries are stagnating. See, says Grupo Mexico. Mexico can be also joining. We can implement it across the three. So because of those four problems, One, the growing cost of rents. Growing cost of rents. Rents are going up. Growing cost of living, the bacon, the eggs, the bread, the butter. These things are also going up in price. The prices are increasing, right? So the prices are increasing as well. So due to the fact that these prices are increasing, thus we gotta implement the DRT. Growing cost of rents, and then in whatever order, the cost of food. Please recycle this, don't leave this there. I don't mind your drinking, but it's got to be recycled. Put it in the recycling, it's over there. So the growing cost of food, growing cost of rent, the stagnation of the salaries. The stagnation of the salaries. The stagnation of the salaries, growing cost of food, growing cost of rent, growing cost of food, the rent, the electricity. That is of course something which of course is increasing. You know, the growing cost of food, the rent. Don't leave that there. Don't leave that there. I don't like finding these on the. You gotta recycle it. The growing cost of rent, growing cost of food, the stagnation of the salaries. The salaries are stagnating. The salaries are stagnating. The stagnation of the salaries, the growing cost of food. You know, it's increasing. Growing cost of food, rentals are increasing, but the problem is that the salaries are stagnating. So that is problematic. Stagnation of the salaries with the growing cost of food, and the rents going up, and the fourth, and in whatever order you place them, the growing credit card debt. The growing credit card debt. Credit cards are being swiped right now. So credit card indebtedness. Credit card indebtedness. So those four problems: growing credit card debt, growing cost of rents, growing cost of living, things such as bacon, eggs, bread, butter, romaine lettuce, other goods which we eat, bacon, cheese, and bread, and beef, and all the things, a lot of things, not all, but a lot of things are increasing in price. So the cost of living, in other words, is increasing. So the growing cost of living, growing cost of rents, stagnation of the salaries, and credit cards. So those are four. So in whatever order you place them, those four, you can place them in different orders. It doesn't really matter how you place them because they vary from individual to individual. From individual to individual, they vary. So they have a variance of how the individual is affected by those in different levels of technicalities or whatever the case may be. Those are the appellations where we are to be doing on that and doing on the love. So those are the things which of course we have, and we have to of course conjugate, and we have of course to be fully aware in the implementation of my DRT, of the debt refusion T, where we are of course to implement it for the North American Collective, for both Canada and United States, because it has to be implemented both Canada and United States as I go now, continue my march in the sun. So it has to be binational, in other words. We have to implement my theory binationally, in a binational manner. It is meant to be implemented binationally. It's not meant to be relegated to just Canada. It is meant to be binational because it's the bipolar strategy. It's part of the major bipolar strategy for total BDD. So now I'm going to explain it. We're going to take all the public and the private debt, my 10,000, your 10,000, their 10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all that debt, public and private debt. We're going to convert all that public and private debt into US dollars. into US dollars. So we're going to convert all the public-private debt into US dollars. We're going to add it, do the addition, and add it with all the public-private debt of the United States. All that money, add it all up with all the money in circulation. We're going to create a new central bank, and we're going to create a new currency called the UE. U.Universal E.Exchange U.UE. U.Universal E.Exchange U.UE. The universal exchange unit is going to have, of course, the value of the US dollar. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. So we're going to create the UE. U.Universal E.Exchange U.UE. U.Universal E.Exchange U.Unit. The universal exchange unit, the UE is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to put an interest rate level of 10%. It's not going to be able to be more than 10%. It could be less, but not more. So all the money converted, add it all up together, we're going to have to do an addition of all the public and the private debt of Canada into the... So all the public-private debt of Canada, we're going to add it all up. We're going to add all that debt. We're going to add it up. And we're going to create the UE. We're going to add it with the United States public-private debt. And we're going to create this UE, Universal Exchange, which is going to have the value of the US dollar as a new currency circulation. It's going to be a new currency in circulation. The UE. So again, explain it. We're going to take all the public-private debt. Myself, I don't have credit cards. I have what's called a line of credit. So I got $10,000 in debt. $10,000 in debt. I got $10,000 in debt. Right? I am $10,000 in debt myself to the RBC. So my debt, your debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, we're going to add it all up, convert it into US dollars. We're going to add it with all the public-private debt of the US, and then with all the money that exists in circulation. That money is going to be the initial money supply for this new central bank, which is going to issue this new currency called the UE. U.Universal E.Exchange U.UE. The UE. U.Universal E.Exchange U.UE. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to clip the maximum interest rate. We're not going to be able to have more than 10% to be charged interest after that. It's going to be 10%, maximum capped after that, 10%. That's just what is going to be the new interest. It could be lower. So with that money, we're going to be able to rebuild the infrastructure, build the bridges, build the highways, mass finance citizens' fitness. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to do a great census, see who we can accord, give some amnesty. See to whom we can accord and give some amnesty. See to whom we can accord to give some amnesty. See to whom we can accord and provide some amnesty. So we're going to do a great census across the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3, the 10 states from Canada, which we're going to add to the 50 for the Imperial fusion. We're going to add amendments to the Constitution. We're going to assign new Constitution, basically, the Imperial Republican Perpetual Union, which is going to require us for mass financing of the health of the citizens by a mass financing tourist activities across the 63 from all states is going to be allocated per individual citizen, so that citizen can have food, housing, and shelter, and transport, food, housing, and shelter. All citizens after the age of 16 can be accorded such I guess it would be a privileged right of all who are going to be in the Imperial Republic. So we're going to fuse Canada and the United States. We're going to fuse the RCMP and the FBI, and we're going to create the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions. The Dragon Army, aka Imperial Integrated Citizens SSD Legion, Security Service and Defense Legion, with the Dancing Goddess Army, the Imperial Integrated Dance League, to dance for the environmental education and action. So that is something which we're going to get doing with that. So that doing is something which, of course, we're going to fundamentally implement. We have to. We're going to do a great census. And this great census, to see who we can allot, and of course some amnesty, because, of course, if somebody has 44 criminal convictions in the past 10 years, if you have 44 criminal convictions, then of course, then none might be eligible. Then you might not be, of course, eligible. And we're gonna build those 44 tunnels also. We're gonna of course build those 44 tunnels. We're gonna of course construct 44 tunnels, mass subterranean cities, tunnels with mass tunnel structures. It'll be like cities where citizens can survive a nuclear attack. In case of a thermonuclear war, we gotta get out, and that in parallel is gonna be with the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act. Consequently, is gonna be given with the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act, where lots of our brothers and sisters are gonna have the opportunity and the privilege to serve, to build those 44 mass tunnel structures across our empire in case of a thermonuclear war, supervised with the Dragon Army and the National Guards. The National Guards could be of service and do some volunteering and do some of that good. And then we're gonna finance fitness, and we're gonna build a 4 on the Canadian-US border. We're gonna be building 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. And one of my 49ers lost in one of my favorite Super Bowls, Super Bowl 47, to the Ravens. One of my favorite Super Bowls, Super Bowl 47, when also known as the Harbor Ball, Blackout Ball, aka Bro Ball. So we're gonna do that, build it on the Canadian-US border. Me and Donald Trump, we're gonna inaugurate it. Another one, which of course we're gonna build together, is gonna be the building of the Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple, bigger, 11 times bigger than the Oratory. Just like that Imperial Sports Coliseum for sport that's in perpetuity, 24/7 sports, is gonna be 11 times bigger than the Superdome in Louisiana. We're gonna build a pyramid house of the dragon, the pyramid house of the dragon. Scarlet, crimson scarlet. The pyramid scarlet, crimson house of the dragon, and the Rainbow People's Palace. The Rainbow People's Palace is for my neurodivergent and LGBTQ community, so we're gonna build those 4. We're gonna mass finance tourism, mass finance Imperial wellness through tourism. We're gonna rehabilitate our North American population. We're gonna mass finance the building reconstruction of the bridges, the highways, massive public infrastructure works across our empire, massive infrastructure works around our empire, massive infrastructure works across our empire. Massive infrastructure works across our empire. That is what we're gonna do, and we're gonna build and rebuild, and gonna fuse, get rid of water, create a common passport. It requires a massive public-private partnership, a massive public-private partnership. It requires a massive public-private partnership. It requires a massive public-private partnership to fuse and get coast to coast, ocean to ocean. And with the DGA, we're gonna have some good dancing and some good loving, rehabilitate our population, and finance wellness, esprit de corps, and joy via tourism. Citizens are gonna be allocated, and we're gonna build more social housing with, of course, there's gonna be webcam integrated and security cameras everywhere. We're gonna build with my brother Scorpio, Bill Gates, and BlackRock and Blackstone are 2 financial institutions which merged off and separated in 1989, but they still work together. It requires a massive PPP, public-private partnership. I see it blurred, but I think that's a flag spotted. I got mine tied up. When I see the flag spotted, we're gonna add 13 more stars. We need to add also 2 flags for the DGA Dancing Goddess Army and the Dragon. Nobody's born a dragon for the SSD Legion. We gotta get some cadence. And it's pledge your legions to our family. So we're gonna take it all the public-private debt, we're gonna convert it into US dollars. We're gonna add it with the public-private debt of the United States, and all that added up, that's gonna be the initial money supply for a new central bank. That's gonna be the initial money supply for a new central bank. So that's gonna be the concordium and what we'll do and how we're gonna work from there. And it's pledge your legions or friends who benefit, support the dream. The Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom is the dream for the fusion, you know, of my way with my DRT theory as a democratic Republican, Republican Democrat, universal revolutionary centrist. My centrism is tied hand in hand with my trinity of theories, which cannot be divorced from the CIT, the DRT, the death row fusion theory, and the citizen integration theory, the DRT, death row fusion theory, and the democratic fusion theory. And that's what we're gonna have to be doing, and that's what we're gonna have to be loving with that. And it's something which, of course, we have to be fully integrated in all the domains where we have the access, of course, to be involved in a situational representation of something which we are, be able to do good, or some people are better at other things than other things, you know, and that is just something which we have, of course, to be loving about, you know. But it requires some love. It's peace through strength. I support it, but only halfway, 50%, 50-50, because you got some love, you know. Peace through strength, because I understand fully that I predicted what's happening now, so I support it, but not all the way, 50%, because you gotta add some love. French now, because we made a great linguistic compromise, so gotta share some love for French, because we la belle province. Pledge allegiance to our family, rock and roll 24/7, for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, electricians, the plumbers, the bakers, train conductors, and the firefighters, and the lovers, the youth, train conductors, welders, butchers, those flipping some hamburgers, cheeseburgers, construction workers who build houses even now, on steel toes or not, 24/7 rock and roll. We're gonna go by the side of that, getting some more hydration, HYDRATE, because it's HOT, French, because we're in la belle province, in 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off. Et bienvenue Québécois québécoises à la marche entraînement physique. Lundi, je vous encourage à faire l'entraînement physique. L'entraînement physique a été seulement médecine et thérapie de choix. Oh, je pense que ça dit bombardier. Bombardier. Salutations. Ou chauffeur d'autobus et de train. Bien sûr, ça c'est un train, c'est pas un autobus, mais bien sûr, toujours pour le transport public. Du rock-and-roll pour les camionneurs, les infirmières, les bouchers. Ça prend un peu de la bureaucratie. Des fois, on a des papiers, des muscles et du cerveau. Je veux dire, ça en prend des deux des fois, mais c'est sûr que des fois, ça prend plus d'autres choses que d'autres choses. Donc, en vous encourageant à faire l'entraînement physique, bien sûr, ça fait longtemps déjà que je suis parti sur mes pieds. J'avais un rendez-vous, donc je suis allé pour me présenter, toujours ouvert pour l'emploi. Je suis financièrement stressé, mais à cause du stress, c'est quelque chose que j'envisage, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, dans le point de conséquence qu'on vit, bien sûr, dans ce point de vivre ici. Mais j'aimerais ça mettre de la peinture, tu sais. Mettre de la peinture ici, tu sais, pour mettre de la peinture, tu sais. C'est quelque chose, bien sûr, pour mettre de la peinture, mais quelque chose de bleu, blanc, rouge, blanc.